whenever the web server sees a GET request for a /root, it just knows that this is for the home page and it needs to serve the home page or the first content to the user. Now to do so, what we want to do is actually go ahead and use app, so we use @ and then we do app.root because we're creating a root, and then in brackets we need to specify what root we're creating. So as I said, the first root the user is always redirected to by the browser or by the link they're using is /, so that's the default one, which should technically take the user to our homepage. So what we want to do with this app.root is provide it with a function that it runs every time the user has reached this root, so the default root. So whenever the user types in / or reaches the default root, we want to create an index function which is going to be run, and then in this index function we're just going to return and say hello world. Cool. So what's going on now is as soon as the user types in our link to this web server and then requests for the / or the initial request for this /, this index function is going to be run and the user will see hello world text on their screen. Now obviously there's a lot of background stuff going on which is being handled by Flask, which is why we have a clean interface where we can just type in return hello world. If not for Flask, we would have a load of lines just to make this possible. So now you guys might say, how do we actually run our server and start and view the outcome of this? Right, so as soon as we're done with that, what we want to do is go ahead and open up CMD. So type in CMD so that we can actually start our server. And then what you want to type in there is we want to make sure that we're in the same folder as where this app.py file is. So cd desktop and then cd my website is the name of the directory in which my app.py server is, which is going to be run by Flask. Now first off, what you want to do is set some environment variables which are going to be used by Flask. So type in set flask app and then equals that to the name of your app, which is app.py in my case. So I'm going to press enter so Flask knows which app to use as its web server or the main file, and then you can just type in flask run, and then technically that should just start working. Now as I said before, or I'm saying now, the Flask server runs by default on your local machine on the address 127.0.0.1 and at the port 5000. Now if I go to Chrome really quickly, let's go to Chrome and let's type that address in. Now instead of typing 127.0.0.1 and 5000, you can also type in, okay, let's see why this is not loading. I think it's frozen. Okay, it got frozen for a second. So as you see right here, when I type in that address 127.0.0.1 5000, the first request I'm making to my web server is the / or the / get request, which is why it returns hello world, which is what I've programmed it to do. Now we could also go ahead and type in localhost 5000 and it will have the same result, because technically typing in localhost or 127.0.0.1 is pretty much the same thing. So as you see right here, our first root is working fine. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and assume that we have another page on this website. So let's just rename this to homepage, and then this will be our homepage. And then what we're going to do is copy this code and then paste it down here. Let's say we have an about page as well, so we're going to do / about this time, and then instead of returning homepage we're going to return about, just so that we know that we're on the about page. So let's save that up and go back to our browser. Now let's refresh the page and type in / about. Now when I press enter, you guys may have guessed it will say about, but obviously it doesn't. Now this is not because we have an error in our code, but this is mainly because we haven't restarted the Flask server. Now by default, when debugging is off, which is the default function on Flask servers, so when debugging is off, the server doesn't automatically look for file changes in your Python file. We need to manually go ahead and turn off the server and then turn it on again to actually notice any changes. So this would be very jarring if you're coding and then you have to keep closing the server and starting it again. So the simple fix to this is just to enable debugging mode so that it can automatically look for changes in your Python file and update it automatically. So what you want to do is go ahead and type in set flask underscore debug and then equals that to 1, which means true. So we want to make sure that debugging is on. Press enter and then type in flask run. So now as you see right here, the debug mode on our Flask server is on, so it will pretty much look for any changes that have been made to our main app.py file, so we don't need to start the server each time we make any changes. So let's refresh this. It's frozen again. So we have a error. Okay, so basically it's a common mistake that we made, which is pretty much forgetting to rename the function. Now this function index exists 2 times, which is why it was giving us the error. Let's rename the function to about, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to refresh the page. Okay, refresh the page, and as you see, when we're on our default /root, it shows up as homepage, and if I do /about, it's going to show me the about page. Now just for the sake of this tutorial, let's go ahead and add another root, and let's assume that we had another page called contact. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to contact, and then I'm going to change the function name this time so that we don't have the same error again, and then lastly we'll change return contact. Now just to prove that it's automatically refreshed, when I refresh the page, okay, what's wrong this time? So obviously this is all fine with the error. Let's just refresh, type in, okay. So when we press localhost 5000, I think it was just cached, that's why it gave me the error, or I probably pressed the back arrow or something like that. So when I refresh, it shows me the home page when I am at the default root. When I do /about, it will show me the about page. And when I do /contact, it will show me the contact page. Now obviously I haven't had to refresh the server even once. So now we basically know how to show some information based on roots. Now just for good practice, we're going to learn about how blueprints work in Flask. Now blueprints pretty much avoid us from having to use a single file, or pretty much just this file, to have all the roots and the functions in this file. So instead of doing this, we can actually use a class in Flask called blueprints, and then link all of these roots in that file and then import that file in here. So it may sound confusing now, but it's going to make sense in a moment. So what you want to do is go ahead and create a new file. So press on Ctrl.N, I think it is, yes, Ctrl.N, and then press on save. Save this file as, let's just call it app blueprint, because this is the blueprint of our app. So it's pretty much going to store all the roots and the functions that are going to be run for the different roots that we have on our website. So in here you want to do from Flask import B blueprint, and then in here we're going to do app blueprint equals blueprint, and then in here we need to provide the name of our blueprint that we're going to have. I'm going to call it the same, so app blueprint, and then the actual name of this module, so __ name. Cool. So now that the requirements are satisfied, we can actually go ahead and do our routing in here. So instead of having to do all of our routing in here, we're going to grab all the routing that we did in this file. So I'm going to go Ctrl X, save, and then I'm going to paste it in here. Oh no, what did I do? Ctrl X, and then save it in here. Cool. So instead of actually having to do that, app.roots, because app.roots is not defined anymore, what we're going to have to do is change that to app blueprint.root, so that it uses the blueprint variable that we just created that holds the Flask blueprint object, and then it's able to route us there. Now since this file is already ready, you might say, how do we actually link this app.blueprint py file to our app.py file? Now the answer is pretty simple. We're going to be importing it, because technically any py file can be imported as a custom module or an existing module. So what we're going to do is make an import for the app_blueprint file that we just created. So we do from app blueprint import app blueprint. So we're saying from this module called app.blueprint, we want to actually import app blueprint as this object right here. So what we want to do next is go ahead and register a blueprint for this app. So we do app.register, and then we pass in the app blueprint variable or the class that we just imported, which is coming from here. So I have an error actually, so it's not app.register, it's app.register_blueprint because we're registering a blueprint, and this is just a method that is available to Flask. So let's save that up, refresh. I need to get this going. So refreshed, and as you see, homepage works. Since the homepage works, the other pages should work as well. Let's try about, and let's try contact. Cool, so all of the pages are working fine. So that basically means that we've used a better approach and a cleaner approach of using a modular programming method, where we've split the routing and the running of functions into a different module, and we're still able to use the functionality as before. So obviously using it this way makes it a lot more easier to manage when you have a large code base. If it's obviously a small project, you could just carry on with the first method that was shown to you. Now, instead of just returning normal text, we can actually return HTML text. So what we're going to do is actually return HTML attributes or HTML elements using this routing that we have going on right here. So instead of returning just homepage, I'm going to actually create an HTML tag, so a h1 tag, and then I'm going to send that instead of just passing in a normal text. So let's go ahead and do that for the about as well. So I'm going to make this h1 and then close h1. So this is just normal HTML markup language where we're creating a header element which is going to hold the text of contact. So it's pretty much going to make the text bold. Whatever text is inside, it makes it bold, and then it makes it a bit larger. So let's refresh, and as you see right here, the text we were returning is no longer just a normal string, it is actually an HTML element. We can prove that by going ahead and selecting the file and then inspecting it. So if you inspect on the contact, as you see right here, it's not a normal text element, it is actually an HTML text element which says h1, and then you have the text in there. Cool, so that was it for today's tutorial, guys. Hope you have learned something new through this tutorial. Hope I didn't overwhelm you with way too much information. If you guys would like to support the channel, you can do so by either signing up as a patron using the Patreon link in the description. You can also purchase a super chat emoji or a highlighted message when this video premieres, as it really helps. Also consider joining my Discord channel and adding up my socials for a load of fun. And guys, I will see your beautiful faces in part 2 of using Flask using Python. Peace! So in this video we're going to pretty much learn how to render out templates. That we create using HTML from our Flask server. So first of all, what I'm going to go ahead and do is open up Visual Studio Code and then open up the website folder that I created in the last tutorial. So in the last tutorial we learned about how to get started with Flask, what Flask is, and how you can pretty much enable different settings on Flask to host your own website and kind of get an outcome from the web server when the user visits your site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open my website folder that I created in the last tutorial. Okay, so once that's opened up, what we have in here is the app.py, which is the main file that controls the web server and is being run by the Flask as soon as we run the server. And what we also have is the app.blueprint file, which pretty much allows the app file to import the blueprint file and know which routes are going where. So in the blueprint file we were able to pretty much set up the different routes to the web server. So the initial route is we're going to return a homepage header tag. The route to about is going to return a header tag for an about page, and similarly the route to a contact page is going to return a header tag for a contact. Cool. So since we've got all of that sorted, in this tutorial what we're going to be learning is, instead of having to return these elements separately, we're going to learn how to actually render out an actual template or send off an actual HTML file to the browser like a normal web server would, because having to write code in here would be really long and it can get confusing and hard to manage after a while. So that's what we're going to be learning in this tutorial. Now before we proceed, I'd like to say, if you haven't watched part 1 of this tutorial, I really recommend you do, because this all will make a lot more sense as it is a continuation to the part 1. So without further ado, let's begin. So what you want to do first of all is actually go ahead and create a templates folder in your My Website or your main website directory. So I'm already in my main website directory that is just called My Website. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and then I'm going to call it templates. So templates. Okay, I'm creating it in the wrong place, so make sure that it's outside, so exactly in your My Website directory, create a new folder and call it templates. So make sure that you're spelling this correctly, because by default the naming convention that you use is templates. So if you use this, the Flask server already knows where to look for your templates, and you don't need to specify the entire directory. Unless you rename this to a different folder name, you'd have to then specify the folder. Cool. So what you want to do in your templates folder is go ahead and add a few HTML files. So I'm going to add 3 HTML files, one for my homepage, one for the about, and one for the contact us. So I'm going to go inside my templates folder, create a new file and call that index.html. Now since it's a .html file, it's pretty much anything that a browser can render. So this is a hypertext markup language file that is recognized by most browsers, and it will just display all the elements that I create on it. So now instead of rendering elements from each return statement that we have in here, we're going to create those elements in this file, index.html, and then render out the file in here instead. So first off, what I'm going to do is initialize the doc type, then type in HTML to create my HTML start and end. So I have an opening and closing HTML tag. Then I'm going to have my head tag, which is pretty much going to include information like my title. So I'm going to include the title, and I'm going to call this, let's say this is going to be like a store that I'm going to have. So I'm going to say Johan's store, because this is going to be like my little store website, I guess. And then once I'm done with the head tag, I'm going to go ahead and create a body tag and a closing body tag. So this is an opening body and closing body, so anything that is physically visible on the website goes in here. Now obviously I'm not explaining this in depth because this is not an HTML tutorial, this is more about Flask, so yeah. So what I'm going to do in my body tag is go ahead and create a header1 tag so that we can create a header, and I'm going to call this Johan's store. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this using a center tag. Now in HTML this would be a really bad practice, which is why it's also highlighting it as red, but obviously since we're not going to be using this as a live website and we're just doing it for the sake of this tutorial as like an example, we can roll with that. I'm going to also create a paragraph tag which is going to say, I don't know, best merch in the game. I know it's cringe, but hey, nothing else coming to my mind right now. So I'm going to do a paragraph tag which is going to be under the header tag, and I'm going to center it out as well. So if anything between the center open and close tag is going to be centered out. Cool. So that's pretty much all that's going to be on my homepage. So now you might say, hey, you've already created this index.html page that is in your templates folder. How do you actually host it on your Flask so that when the user goes to your initial root or the / root on your web server, the index.html file is served to him? So the answer is pretty basic. What you want to do is go back to your app blueprint.py file, unless you've got your routing in the app.py file, which is the old method or the inconvenient method if you've got a lot of roots. So go in your app_blueprint.py file, and then in the first line what you want to do is from Flask you want to import blueprint, and you also want to import something called render template. So Flask makes it really convenient as it already has a class in it called render template, which pretty much helps us render an entire HTML file or an HTML template using a single line. So otherwise we would have to type in a load of lines, but Flask makes it really easy. So now that we're done importing the render template class, what you want to do is I'm going to go to my index function right here, which is where my homepage should be returned. I'm going to get rid of this h1 and homepage because I'm not returning normal markup in here anymore. I'm actually going to render out the file and return it to the browser. So I'm going to return render template, which is the name of the class that we just imported. And then in here we need to specify the name of the file that is going to be rendered out. Now, as I said before, since we've gone with the naming conventions and called the folder templates, it already knows where to look for the template. So it's going to by default look for the templates folder, and in the templates folder it's going to look for the index.html file, since I've mentioned it in here now. So let's save this up, and now that I've got everything ready, that's about it. What I need to do is open up CND. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit so it's easier for you guys to see, and in here I'm going to do cd desktop / my website. Oops, my website, because that's where the app.py file is. That's going to be run by a Flask. So first of all, what I'm going to do is set Flask in debugging mode, which means that we don't need to keep running the server again and again for it to notice changes. It will automatically notice it and refresh itself. So set Flask underscore debug equals 1. So when I press that, debugging is going to be enabled in Flask. So I can go ahead and type in Flask run now. And as you see right here, it says debug mode is on because we enabled that. And this server is going to be hosting our app.py file, or the app.py server is going to be hosting on our local machine address at the port of 5000. So let's go ahead and copy this address right here. So copy, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a Chrome tab. In there I'm going to go ahead and paste this. And as you see right here, it's a beautiful little Johan store header one, and we have best merch in the game as a paragraph. So as you see, this is actually an index.html file that is being rendered out instead of returning just specific text or specific elements like we were in the last tutorial. So this has worked fine. So every time we do a / request, which is the first request we do when we type in an address, what my code is going ahead and doing is it's going and importing this app.blueprint, and then it goes ahead and says, hey, what's the root for initial /, and then it goes ahead and finds out, hey, I need to run this index function, and the index function says, hey, you need to return, and then render out a template that's already in the templates folder, which is called index.html. Now the contents of the index.html are Johan's store, best game in the merch. Now it's gone ahead and changed the title up here to Johan's store, and then it's also given a header which is in the center, and put the paragraph tag in the center too. Now if I go ahead and do / about, it's obviously got the same old method, which is just rendering out a single element, and the same for contact. So let's go ahead and update those as well, and then we'll bring an end to this tutorial, because that's going to teach you guys how to pretty much render out HTML templates instead of returning just normal elements one by one. Cool. So just to make life easier, I'm going to go ahead and copy the code from index.html, because it's going to be pretty similar what we're about to do. So I'm going to create a new file in my templates folder. So make sure you're in the templates folder again. Create a new file, and I'm going to call this about.html because it's going to be representing my about page. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste the code in there, and then I'm going to say about us. Okay. So I'm going to type in about us in here, and then I'm going to replace this text with a tech YouTuber trying to sell merch. Cool. So that's going to be a text for the About Us page. So it's the same as before. We're just setting up a header that's going to be centered and a paragraph that's going to be centered. Cool. Now let's go ahead and also create our contact page. I'm going to save this and close this. Now back into our templates folder to create a new template for our contact us page. So let's go ahead and create that. Contact.html. Press enter, and I'm going to paste all the code again. Now I'm going to change the title to contact us. And then I'm going to say contact, and then I'm just going to put a fake email in here, so something like email merch@johan.com, something like that. That's a ridiculous domain, but oh well, whatever. So now that we've done all our templates, we need to just go ahead and link our about.html and contact.html to our roots. So let's go into the root for the about, which is right here. and then instead of returning h1 about us, we're going to render out the template instead. So render template, speech marks, and then the name of the file, which is about.html. And then we're going to do the same for our contact root as well. So return render template, and then we're going to do contact.html. Now make sure you're spelling these right and they match all your spellings, and also make sure that all your templates are in your templates folder and nowhere else. So once that's all done, you don't need to restart the Flask server because it's set to debugging on, which means it's auto refreshing each time a change has been noticed. So let's go ahead and check if those changes were saved. I'm going to refresh, and as you see right here, if I go ahead and inspect my page, I'm going to do that. And if you notice, we have all the HTML code that we typed up in our contact.html page. So we have a header tag, or the head tag, which includes the title. Then we have our body, we have the center tag, we have the h1, we also have the paragraph tag, and pretty much everything that was in our markup file. Now if we go to sources, we also see that this is being routed to our contact page. We obviously don't see other sources because they're not being shown. Cool. So let's go ahead and try our about page for the last bit of this tutorial and make sure that it works. And as you see right here, this is working just fine. So that was it for today's tutorial, guys. Just wanted to create a short tutorial to kind of show you how to render out HTML files or HTML templates instead of having to render out each HTML element or a bit of text from our Flask server each time. So if you guys enjoyed this tutorial, please make sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe, and please share it with your friends and family. If you guys would like to support the channel directly, you can sign up as a patron using the Patreon link in the description, where I'm going to be very soon uploading a load of private videos which are going to be about backend and a lot of backdoor stuff. So if you're interested, go ahead and sign up. If you guys would like to join the Discord server that we have, it's also going to be stated in the description, and so are my socials. So go ahead and do that. And guys, I will see your beautiful faces in the next tutorial. Peace! Tutorial. Today's tutorial we're going to be learning how to pretty much serve up a static folder that exists in our directory, and also we're going to learn how to post content on our website dynamically. So in the last tutorial we learned about how to render out HTML templates, but we only learned about how to render out kinda static templates. So in this tutorial we're going to be learning how to use dynamic templates and pretty much grab information from the Python file and then serve it in our HTML file. So first off, what I'm going to go ahead and do is open up Visual Studio Code, and then I'm going to open up the My Website folder, which pretty much stores all the files for my website and my web server. So I'm going to grab it and then drag it in here. Cool. So now if you guys haven't already watched part 1 and part 2 of this tutorial, it's going to be linked in the description, so I recommend you guys watch those short tutorials first, because this is all linked and it will make more sense if you watch those first. If you already have a bit of knowledge about Flask, you can carry on watching this. So first off, what I'm going to do is zoom in a bit so that it's easier for you guys to see. Cool. So what we have going here is the app.py file, which pretty much has the blueprint to the different routes that we have on our web server, and then we have a separate app.blueprint file, or app_blueprint.py file, but which pretty much stores the different routes we have on our web server, and then it stores the render function for rendering the different HTML files that we have. So in the last tutorial, that's what we did. We pretty much rendered static HTML files to the browser. So what we're going to be doing today is, first off, we're going to be actually creating a static folder destination on our web server. So what do I mean by that? So technically what I mean is, by default, if I go ahead and run Flask, so I'm going to go ahead and open up CMD. I'm going to go in my directory, so cd desktop and my website, and in here I'm going to do set flask _debug, equals 1. Now I'm setting this up because I don't want to keep refreshing the server every time I make a change to my app.py or any other related files. If I enable debugging, Flask automatically detects those changes. So what I'm going to do next is type in Flask run, and then it should pretty much start running the web server on the address right here, so my local machine on port 5000. So I'm going to open up Chrome, and then I'm going to run my file or the link that I have, and as you see, we are greeted to our index.html page because that's the initial /root. So we have this. So we're not going to be obviously making the templates folder public, because why would we want the users to view these files in here, because they are meant to be served according to the link that the user types into the URL bar. So we're not going to be making this folder public. This can stay private because that's private information only the server needs to know about. So we're going to go ahead and create another folder for, okay, we're not going to create it inside templates, we're going to be creating it in our main directory for my website, and I'm going to call this directory images. So assuming that our website is going to have different sort of images for our products, because this is sort of like a store website that we're creating just for the sake of this tutorial. So obviously products are going to have images, so we need an images folder where we store images of our products. So I'm going to go ahead and Chrome and type in t-shirt, and then we'll just grab let's just grab a t-shirt image from somewhere here. So let's just go with this one for now. So I'm gonna go ahead, okay, I can't really right click there for some reason. I'm gonna go ahead and save this image as, and then I'm gonna go to my website and then the directory that I just created, which is called images, and it's in my website. So I'm gonna go ahead and save it over there. And this extension is JFIF, so you need to remember the extension of the image, JFIF, so JPEG. So save that up, and now that you're done, you need to go back to your app.py file where you are initializing your Flask object, and you need to pass in an argument. So the argument you're actually going to pass in is called it's called comma. I'm going to put a comma in there to pass an argument, and the argument is going to be static folder equals to, and then the name and the directory of your folder. So I'm going to go in my current directory by typing in // that just means we're in our current directory, and then I'm going to make the images folder available. So now that I've done that, as soon as the Flask server restarts, we need to specify what content we're looking for. So the image we have in that folder is actually called images.jfif. So if I actually go ahead and type in that, we're able to see it, but by default we wouldn't be able to see it. Now that we've made this folder available, we are able to access the different files that are inside. But if I just type in the name of the directory itself, nothing will show up because it's not allowed to show the contents of that directory. It's only allowed to show the content if the name is directly accessed. So if I type in images.jfif, which is the direct link to this image in that images folder, that's the only time it's going to work. Cool, so now that we've learned how to make a static folder available to our clients, what we're going to go ahead and do is learn how to render out dynamic pages. So I'm going to go back to my default page, which is the store right here. So let's assume we have a section on this index.html page which shows the user the most popular products that are being sold on the website. And then it will show the user the name of the product, the size of the product, and then the price, since it's merchandise, so clothing. So what I'm going to do is go ahead into my app_blueprint.py file, which is where all the routing is. Now obviously the routing for my index page is right here, so this is where we're going to be dealing with the information. But before that, we're going to go ahead and create a quick variable, which is pretty much going to act as a dummy database, which is going to store the information about our products. Now the information is going to be read from this variable. It's going to be a list type, which is going to store a dictionary of different product informations. So what we're going to do first is type in variables, just so we know what's going on, and then in there we're going to type in popular products. So we're going to create an array called popular products, and in that array we're going to have a set of different dictionaries. So my first dictionary, the name of the product is going to be let's say Johan Gudino t-shirt. So I'm going to make it really basic. Then maybe we have another key value pair in there called size. Oops, size, where my size is going to be set to small for this product, and then another key value pair which is going to include the price. So price, and the price is going to be let's just say 5 for now. Now also we need to include an image link in here so that we can grab the image later. So I'm going to do a key value pair for an image, so the key is going to be called image, and then the value is going to be the link to the image. So the link to the image would be images folder, and then what was the name of it again? It was images.jfif. Now I'm going to set the same image that I downloaded for all of my products. If you guys want different images, you guys have to change this image link that is specified in here. So that's this whole dictionary that we've just created in our array is only for one product. So that's for the product called Johan Godino t-shirt, which is a size small. Now I'm going to create 2 more products in here. So I'm going to copy the first line and then paste it twice. Now make sure that you have commas in here, because that's the separator for each dictionary that is created in our array. So it needs to have a comma as a separator. Now I'm going to keep the titles the same, but I'm going to change the size on this one to medium, and then I'm going to change the size on the last product to large, and then we're going to change the prices slightly as well. So I'll make this 10 because it's a medium, bit expensive but it's fine, and then 15 because it's a large. So we've pretty much got an array going here called popular products, and we've got dictionaries in there. So each dictionary holds information about a specific product. Cool. So now that we have our little database going, what we're going to do is actually learn how to grab this information and then render it out on our index.html page without having to physically type it in. So first off, what you want to do is where you're rendering the template, you want to pass in a new argument and call it popular products, and then equals that to the variable or the list we just created, which was called popular products right here. So now whenever we run this index.html file, this popular products array is going to be available to us in the index.html file. So in the actual index file, the popular products array that we've just created up here is going to be available, and the name of that variable is set to popular products, obviously. Now you can change this to products or anything you like, but I'm going to go with the name popular products because it's just relevant. Cool. So now that we're done with that, what I'm going to do is go ahead in my templates folder and then open up my index.html file, because that's the file that we're working on, and it's going to be serving the different products that we have. So if I open it up in here, now as of now it only has Johan Store and best merch in the game. Pretty cringe, but that's fine. So I'm gonna refresh. We have an error obviously because okay, let's see what the error is. I'm gonna go back to app.blueprint and let's see, what are you saying? Okay, I don't think it has refreshed since the last time we've saved it, so I'm gonna go ahead and run it again. Refresh. Okay, so it is working fine. Cool. So this is what we have. We just have Johan Store and best merch in the game, which is a pretty static website. Now we're going to be adding on the products that we saved in our popular products array. We're going to be reading all the products from there and then adding them to this file right here without typing it in manually. So to do so, what we're going to do is we're going to create a center tag first, which is not good practice, but hey, it's not an HTML tutorial we're doing here. So products, and then this section is going to mark the product section. So if I go ahead and refresh the page, I'll show you what I just did. It's just created a product section right here. Now under this title product is going to be all the popular products. Actually, let's just call this popular products. So popular products. And now what I'm going to do under there is going to be starting a loop. So in this HTML file, we can actually run code that is going to be run by our Flask engine. So the Flask engine can interpret this code and pretty much do dynamic stuff instead of just doing static stuff with it. So we're going to start a for loop. So whenever we want to write code, we want to use curly braces and percentage sign. One in the start, one in the end. And then you can write your code in there. So I'm going to write for product in popular products. Now if you remember, if we go back to app.blueprint, we passed in this popular products argument right here, which is storing the popular products array, which is why we can access it in here. We can access the popular products array because we passed it in there. Now we don't use the normal format, which would have been using a colon. We need to specify where this loop ends actually. So we need to create an end for this loop, which is why we're going to add another code block by doing curly braces and percentage signs in the start and end. And then we're going to say end for, which means end the for loop. Now all the instructions that are going to be run inside the loop are going to be between the start for loop and the end for loop. So I'm going to go ahead and create an h3 element in there, which is going to hold the product name. So I'm going to type in product name, and then in here what we're going to be extracting is going to be the product name that we gather from our product object. So for each product object in our popular products array, we're going to grab the name and display it in here. So whenever you're displaying a variable, you need double curly braces in the start and double curly braces in the end, and then you can specify the variable name. So I'm going to go with product.name, obviously because product is the object we're accessing, and then .name is the name of the product. So if I show you right here, we did that before. .name is the name of the product, .size would be the size, and then .price would be the price, and .image would be the image directory. Cool. So we have gathered the product.name. Now let's save this up and refresh to see how we're doing. So as I said before, popular products it says, and now it's rendering pretty much all the product names from our list. So it says product name, Johan Godino t-shirt, and then it says it 3 times because we pretty much have 3 products in our popular products array. Now obviously the names are the same because we haven't changed them up. So let's go ahead and display the sizes and prices too. So I'm going to, for the prices, before we actually do prices actually, we can show the image. So it would be nice if we would show the image of the product after the product name. So let's do image and set the source of the image. So we set the source of the image to product.img because .img means we're accessing the value of our img key, which pretty much is the directory to the image. Cool. So if I go back here, as you see, .img is the key, and then that's the link to the image, so directory to the image. Let's save this and refresh to see if that works. And as you see right here, that works flawlessly as well. Now all the images are the same because we've added the same image for all 3 products. Now when it comes to size and prices, it's going to show you different sizes and prices because each product has a different size and a different price. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and display the size and the price. So for this, to display the size, I'm going to do a h4, and then I'm going to do double curly braces in the start and end because it's a variable that I'm trying to display, and then I'm going to do product.size because I want to display the size. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this and replace the h4 with a h5 because I want it to be a slight bit smaller than the h4. And then I'm going to do product.price. Cool. And then after that our loop will successfully end because it's pretty much showing all the product details for each product that we have in our popular products array. So if I refresh this right now, as you see right here, it says product name, Johan Godino t-shirt, a nice little image, small, and then £5. And then it says medium and £10, large, and then £15. Now we need to add size and then price here so that it makes more sense. So what we're going to do is add some static information. So instead of just showing the product size value, we're going to say size and then whatever value is grabbed from our array, and then we're going to say price and then whatever value is grabbed from our array. And obviously we need a pound sign as well for it to make sense. So if I refresh this now, as you see right here, we have our static element that we added, which is size and colon, and we have another static element, price and price colon and the pound sign. So as you see, we have a decent looking, or I wouldn't say decent looking, but the hyper markup language version of a product store running. So technically, when you're doing this in a realistic scenario, you would have the data for all of these products in an actual MySQL database. We could do a tutorial on that in the future, but for this tutorial, this should be fine because we're just using a temporary data structure where we're using a array to store different dictionaries of products. So that was it for today's tutorial, guys. Hope you have learned something new and you can use this to implement your own websites. Instead of using a data structure like an array, you can try using MySQL. If you guys liked the video, please make sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe and share, because sharing is quite important. I would like to thank you guys for all the support you guys have been showing me recently. If you guys would like to support the channel directly, you can do so by signing up as a patron using the Patreon link in the description. If you do so, you're going to be quite lucky, because I'm soon going to be posting a lot of exclusive videos on Patreon, such as backend programming and backdoor using Python as well. So if you're interested, sign up using the link in the description. Also guys, make sure to check out the Discord channel and my socials in the description. And I will see your beautiful faces in the next Flask tutorial. Peace! So in today's tutorial, we're going to be learning how to use conditional statements. In this tutorial, we're going to be learning how to use conditional statements when we render out a dynamic HTML page. So obviously this page is going to be interpreted and run using our Flask server, which is why we are going to be able to use some conditional statements in the HTML file that is rendered by our Flask. So first of all, what I'm going to go ahead and do is open up Visual Studio Code. And then in there, I'm going to open up the website folder that I have right here. So in this My Website folder, I have all the resources that are needed to pretty much run my website. So all the dependencies, including my app.py, which controls the Flask server that I have, the app_blueprint file, which pretty much stores the different routes and what actions have to be taken when a specific route is entered on my web server, and the templates and all that stuff. So if you guys haven't already watched the part 2 and part 1 of this tutorial, I really recommend you do. So there's already 3 parts that have been released on this Flask series. So I recommend you watch those first and then come back to this one. Unless you feel really confident and you only want to learn how to use if and else conditionals on your HTML templates and get them working using Flask. So what we have going here is, in the last tutorial we had a array called popular products, which had different dictionaries, and the dictionaries pretty much stored details related to each product. So now if I go to my templates folder, our index.html folder, because we were pretending to create a store, our index.html folder pretty much had some text that said Johann's store, and then it showed popular products. So the popular products were not entered static, so they weren't added in a static manner where we type in each product one by one, but instead they were imported from the popular products array right here. So we had a for loop that was running in our HTML template that was being compiled by the Flask engine, and then once it recognizes and runs through pretty much all the products, it would set it up as the HTML tags that we've added in here, and then that would work just fine. So I'm just going to show you what we had going by opening up CMD. What I'm going to do is zoom in a little bit so that it's easier for you guys to see. So I'm going to cd desktop and then my website, because that's where my Flask server is at the moment, and I'm going to do set flask underscore debug equals 1, so that I don't have to keep refreshing the Flask server. It automatically will detect any changes. And then lastly, I'm going to do Flask run. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and open up Chrome, because it's going to start hosting my server files and pretty much all the templates. I'm going to go to localhost 5000, or not 5500, 5000. So localhost 5000. And as you see right here, this is the website we had in the last tutorial. It's a pretty basic website, because obviously we're not dealing with HTML and CSS in these tutorials. We're just learning about how to render out a dynamic template instead of a static template using Flask. So if I show you the code, as you see right here, you have 3 products being shown where there's different variables to these products. So one product has the size of small and the price is £5, whereas the other products have a size of medium, large and price differences as well. So obviously only these line 11 to line 16 are pretty much importing all of these products from our popular products array, and then they're assigning them to the relevant HTML tag, and then compiling the entire document as relevant HTML and then passing it to the browser. So that's what we did in the last tutorial. So what if we had to use if conditionals, or if we wanted to use if and else conditionals in here as well? So there is actually a way we can do that, and it is pretty easy to use. So let's assume that on our store, so if I go back to my store right here, so let's assume that on our store right here, instead of having just normal prices, our website did discounts once in a while. And what you wanted to do to increase sales was to pretty much show the discounted products in red color and show the non-discounted products or just normal products in green color. And on the discounted products, you also want to show how much is being deducted or how much the user will be saving. So in this case, we could use if and else statements. So to do so, what I'm going to go ahead and do is go back to Visual Studio Code, go back into my app_blueprint file, and in my popular products array, what I'm going to do is go into my dictionary for the products, and on the first product, I'm going to go ahead and create a new key value pair. So the name of the key is going to be discounted, and then the value is going to be set to true. Now I'm doing this because I'm creating a new key on which I'm going to run an if statement in my template later on. So I'm going to run an if statement on my template where I say if this discounted field is true, then what we want to do is we're going to find out how much the discount is. So we're going to create another field in here called discounted amount, and then we're going to set the amount to pretty much how much the user is saving, so how much is being discounted from the normal price, let's say 5. And for the rest of the products that you want to or do not want to be discounted, so let's make this one discounted as well, make that true, and then discounted amount, let's make that £2. And then the last one, we're just going to make sure that it's not discounted, so at least one needs to be not discounted so that we can make sure that it's working fine. So on this one, I'm just going to do discounted false, and since it is not discounted, we don't really need to specify how much is being discounted, because hey, if it's not discounted, how can we have a price that's being discounted? Either way, that's our data structure ready. So now we have 2 new key value pairs. This key value pair which defines whether the product is discounted or not, and if the product is discounted, then we have the amount that's being discounted. So now that we know what to do, we're going to go ahead and implement this logic in our index.html file so that it can be rendered later on. So we have our product name here, and we also have a for loop that pretty much goes through all the dictionaries that exist in our popular products array, and then it can give us the ability to grab their values based on the key we have. So for example, here we do product name, and then we grab the product.name attributes, .name key, which will return the name of each product in here. Now similarly, we could access other properties of this dictionary as well, such as the discounted and discounted amounts, which is what we're going to be doing. So after the title, I want to specify whether this product is discounted or not. So what I'm going to do is add a new code block by doing curly braces and then percentage signs, and in here I'm going to do an if statement. So I'm going to say if, we need to do if product.discounted, then what we want to do is whatever action is going to be run after this statement right here is going to be under the if code block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the product.discounted is true. So technically what I could do is type in =true, but instead of that, if you just type in if product.discounted, it assumes that the value you are looking for is true. Well, if it returns false, then this if statement won't run. So that's the logic we're doing here. So when we have an if statement, you also need to have an end if statement, because this is how we're going to be coding inside our code blocks, because we need to make sure we know where this if statement is ending. So now we know that this if statement right here will end right here, so that it doesn't affect the other elements that are being rendered. Now we're also going to have an else statement. So we're going to say if this product is discounted, then we do so and so stuff, else we're going to do so and so stuff under here. So the condition for else, let's just make a comment in here really quickly. This is the condition for else, and this is the condition for the if. So if the product is discounted, what we want to do is I'm going to create a paragraph tag in here, and then I'm going to add a style attribute to it. Obviously this is not good practice, but since we're just doing this for the sake of a Flask tutorial, it's fine to use. So in the style, I'm going to define a color, which is going to be set to, since we decided discounted products are going to be set in red, we're going to be using red. Now we also said we want to display how much the user is going to be saving. Now we're going to say discounted, and then we're going to do a colon, pound sign, and then we're going to display how much the user is saving. Now if you remember, we did save this as discounted amount. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in product, and then make sure whenever you're displaying a variable, you need to use double curly braces in the start and then the end if you want to use a code block. So I'm going to do product dot discounted amount, because that's the name of the key what we assigned in here if there is a discount, so discount amount. So in this case it will grab 5. So we're saying if the product is discounted, we want to display discounted and then how much is being discounted as well. Now we need to set the else as well. So if pretty much else would run any product that doesn't have a discounted attribute set to true. So style equals green because it's not a discounted product, and then we're going to say normal price. Okay, so we don't need to actually specify how much is being, okay, style equals color green, my bad. And then we don't need to specify how much is being discounted because obviously this product is just selling at a normal price. So that should be about it for the conditionals. Now if everything is working fine, this HTML page should be rendered as we expect it to, where the discounted products, the first 2 products, are going to be in red, and they're going to specify how much is being saved by the user, and the normal products that are not discounted are going to be in green, which is the last product. Let's go ahead and check. So if I refresh my page, we have an error. Let's see, I don't think it's actually refreshed since the last time we let's see, counted. I don't think it's refreshed because sometimes it just gets stuck in a loop. So I'm gonna go ahead and refresh this. Cool. Flask run. Let's refresh now. And as you see right here, it did get stuck. For some reason my computer freezes CMD if I leave it running in the background too long. So as you see right here, for the discounted products, which were the first 2 products, it says discounted in a red color, and then it says how much is being discounted. Now obviously it would be a bit more helpful if it put like a minus sign over here. So if I go back to my HTML template and put minus pound sign so that the user can tell that they're saving something. So something like this. So discounted -5, then it's discounted -2, and then this is just selling at the normal price. Now obviously the HTML template knows this because we're using if conditionals, and if we go back to our blueprint file, the first product is discounted because it's true, and then the amount that is discounted is £5. The second product is discounted too because it's true, and then it's saving £2 as the discounted amount, and then the last product is not discounted because it's set to false. And we know all of this because we're running if and else statements or conditional statements in our dynamic HTML file that is being rendered using our Flask server. So that was it for today's tutorial, guys. Hope you have enjoyed this tutorial and learned something new about Flask. Hope you'll be able to implement this in your own websites and find better ways of using it as well. I hope you're excited for the new upcoming videos for the Flask tutorials. If you guys would like to donate to the channel directly, you can do so by either signing up as a patron using the Patreon link in the description, or purchasing a super chat emoji or a highlighted message when this video premieres. I'm not forcing anyone to do so, but if you guys do, it really helps out the channel. Please make sure to drop a like, comment, share, and subscribe, guys, because that's very important because I'm trying to get this channel going at the moment. So if you guys could share, that would be amazing. And guys, I will see your beautiful faces in the next tutorial. Peace. So in this tutorial we're going to be learning about some good practices that we can use while creating a Flask website. So we're going to be using the concept of parents and child classes to pretty much create a layout template that's going to be used by all the files on our website. So this might not make sense right now, but as we code it will make a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and open Visual Studio Code, and then I'm going to open up my website folder in here, which is already open, which pretty much stores all the files that are needed by my website to run smoothly. Cool. What I want to do next is I'm going to go ahead and go through the few things that are going on at the moment. So my app.py file is pretty much the main file that my server runs as soon as the server is started, and the app_blueprint file stores pretty much all the routes and has a little temporary data structure like an array which stores different products in it. Now, if you guys haven't already watched the first four tutorials, actually, if you haven't watched those, I recommend go ahead and watching those first, as they're going to be linked in the description, because these tutorials are linked together, so it will make a lot more sense if you watch those first. Now, if you only want to learn about how to use inheritance of a parent and child class and using a block concept, then you can carry on watching. Now, you may say, what do I mean by using a parent and child concept and using blocks? So what you want to do is, in coding, usually the rule of thumb is, if in our templates folder, let's open all the files, right? So in coding, the rule of thumb usually is, if something is repeating, you need to make sure that it is not repeated and just extracted from one place and placed here. So for example, this code, doctype, HTML, head, body, and end HTML. This code is repeating in every file. So as you see, this code is very repetitive. So what we could do instead is, in our templates folder, we could create a new file. So I'm going to go in my templates folder right here, create a new file, and I'm going to call this layout.html. Now in our layout.html, we can program this as a parent class, which all our child classes, which means other files such as about, contact, and index.html would use or inherit. So in this HTML document, we could include the structure which is needed by all files, which means we need to include the doctype, HTML, head, body, and HTML. And in the other files, we can just include the content for the specific page. Now this can be done using something that is known as a block. So what you want to do in your layout.html page is, you want to code up the structure that is going to be used by all the files. So I'm going to do doctype, and I'm going to start an HTML opening tag, and then in here I'm going to do a head tag, and then I'm going to do a body tag. Now this is the structure that pretty much all our files are going to have, and since it is in common, we don't want it repeating. That's why we're going to use only this layout.html file to inherit this into the other files that we have going. So to do this, what we want to know is that where the content is going to be replaced. So obviously in a head tag, each of these files is pretty much going to have a title, right? So in a head tag, we want to have a section for a title. So we're going to create a block which will be replaced by the value of the title by each individual HTML document that inherits this. So I'm going to do curly braces, and then to add a code block, I'm going to do percentage signs, and in the middle I'm going to say block because we are creating a block, and then I'm going to call this block title because this block is going to be used for title. Now we need to also specify when this block is going to end, so I'm going to end block and block, and then I'm going to specify which block I'm ending, which is title block that I'm ending right here. So what this means is this block called title can be replaced with any data we need from our child class. Now let me explain how that will work in a second. So since we have our title block ready, let's go ahead and create a block in our body tag as well, since all of the data from our respective files would be different. That's why we need a block here so that this can be replaced. So block contents, let's call this, because it's going to be the content of the website, and I'm going to paste that again, and I'm going to do block end block content. So now that that's done, this layout.html file is pretty much complete. Now what we want to do to inherit these details into our other files is import it into our other files. So we can do this by going on to our other file, so I'm going to start with let's just start with about.html. So let's start with about.html. And I'm going to start by going ahead and deleting all the stuff that is already in the layout.html. So I've got the basic information already in my layout.html, so I don't really need it repeating now. Let's get rid of that. And now this is technically all the information I really need for this to be working. Now at the start of the document on line 1, what you want to do is specify where your parent class is. So create a code block and then specify where your code block is by typing in extends, which means it's going to extend its parent class, and then type in the name of the parent class, which is for me layout.html. Now since they're in the same directory, they should have no problems finding the layout.html file. Cool. So this line right here specifies what the parent class is. So it's going to, this code right here is going to go ahead in this file and pretty much inherit all of this. So it's going to take all of this and chuck it in here. Now you might say, we want to place this title in the head section, and obviously we want to paste the other content inside the body section. So that's why we added blocks. So the block title would be replaced by any block title content in here, and the block content would be replaced by any block content in here. So I'll show you what I mean. Let me quickly go ahead and add a code block. I'm going to type in block title, and then %sign. And then obviously this is all that's going to be stored in our title or in the head section. So end block title. So what I'm saying right here is the title right here is going to be taken from here, and then it's going to be placed in our head section because our title is between these head tags. So it's going to take anything that's placed between these title block tags and then chuck all the information in here. Cool. So now we can do the same for our body as well. So for the body content, we create a different code block. So we're gonna use block content because that already exists and it's in our body tags. And then we need to end it wherever the content ends. So I'm gonna go ahead and do end block for content. Cool. Now if you did everything correctly, the website on the about.html page should function just like before, but without this information in there because it's already inheriting these details from our layout.html. So it's inheriting all its basic information from the layout.html. Cool. So I'm gonna pretty much just indent this properly, save this up, and now I'm gonna go ahead and open up our Flask server. So cmd, let me zoom in here a bit for you guys to see easily. So cd desktop, what's wrong with my typing today? cd desktop, and let's say my website because that's where my Flask app is. Now we'll do set Flask debug equals 1 because I want it to be able to debug and not just crash, and we'll do Flask run. Cool. Now I'm gonna go ahead and open up a Chrome window so I can show you guys what my website looks like. So localhost 5000, and we have a connection. As you see right here, we have a pretty basic store going, so a concept of a store. And in the last tutorial, we also learned about how to use conditionals to pretty much show relevant information on specific items. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to my about page by typing in about, and we have an error. It says unexpected end. Okay, let's go ahead and see. Maybe we've got an extra something. Seems to be correct. Let's go ahead and see the layout. Let's go into I was complaining about the app.blueprint file. Oh, I see. Wait, no, actually. About. Cool. So seems to be fine. End block title. Let me see. And that is in which file? That is in layout.html. Let's go back to our layout.html. Okay, so we're missing a % here. My bad. And I'm gonna go ahead and make sure my server's running while it is. And I'm gonna go ahead and refresh this page. You good? Let's just make sure the server's running again. Okay, and there we go. So as you see right here, our code is working fine. And that's because it's inheriting all the details from its template. So the top section says about as a title, and then the body section has the information needed too. So we can inspect to confirm this, because in our head tag, as you see, we have about.html, and in our body tag, we pretty much have all the content that we need it to have. So what we want to do next is pretty much use this single template, or this layout.html, in all of our files. We've only used it in about.html so far. So I'm going to go ahead in my contact page, get rid of this, oops, not all of that, get rid of this, and this. And then in here we're going to replace that with our first code block, which is going to be extends layout.html, so that it knows where its parent class is. Then we're going to grab the title, so that we can chuck the title in there. Let's go ahead and indent this. Then we can just copy this line, paste it down here, and we're going to do end block. Then we're going to go ahead and copy the block for the content, paste it down here. We can just indent this too. And then we're going to do another end block for our content. Cool. So let's test that our contact page is working now as well. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to contact. And as you see, it is working just fine. So if I inspect, it's pretty much inheriting all the basic information about the layout from the layout.html, and the rest of the information is being gathered from the relevant contact.html page. Now let's go ahead and finish off the last files, just so that the entire website is uniform and just working fine. So it's the last page, index.html. So go ahead and delete the stuff that I don't need. So let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. And let's get rid of this. Let's go ahead and copy some stuff. So extends layout.html to specify once again where to get its parent class from. Block title is going to be here. Then we're going to copy this and paste it down here and say end block. And we're going to cut this in, paste it in here, bish bash bush. We're going to copy the block for content, paste it right here. Copy the block for content, paste it right here. Then we're going to copy this and create an end block as well. So end block for the content. Now let me check that my index.html page is working fine. And as you see right here, it is working just fine. And this page was a bit more complex because it had a loop and images as well. So even with a loop and images and a bit more complex code than the other pages, this is working just fine. So now this is good practice, because if I wanted to make a change, so for example, if I wanted to add some bootstrap code to this, I do not have to go to the head section in my individual files. So I don't have to go into every template file that I have. I can go ahead in my layout.html and add the bootstrap in my layout.html, and then it will pretty much import this code for the bootstrap that I've got in here to link bootstrap, and then it will put it in pretty much all the child files that it has, which is pretty much all the templates apart from layout.html. So that's the good practice, as well as being able to change this main template at any given time, and then being able to have all those changes applied to all the child files without having to go to them individually. So that's it for today's tutorial, guys. Hope you have enjoyed and learned something new. If you guys have enjoyed the tutorial, please make sure to drop a rating on it, like, comment, subscribe and share, because that really helps out. If you guys would like to donate to the channel directly, you can do so by signing up as a patron using the Patreon link in the description, or you can simply purchase a super chat emoji or a highlighted message when this video premieres. If you guys would like to check out my socials or join the Discord channel for a bit of fun, you can do that using the links in the description. And guys, I will see your beautiful faces in the next tutorial. Peace! So in this video we're going to be learning about how to pretty much beautify our website or make it look pretty using CSS. So for this we're going to be learning about a new method of rendering or pointing out to pretty much static files instead of using the static folder method that we have been using. So that's the proper method of doing it, which is why I'm going to be introducing it to you guys in this tutorial. First off, I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. And bear in mind guys, if you haven't already watched my series on this from scratch, I really recommend you go ahead and watch a few videos before this, because that will make really sense, as this video will be in line with those tutorials. So in the previous tutorials, we kind of worked on this dummy store that we were creating using Flask. So that's what we're going to be working on today, and we're going to be using CSS to make it look pretty. So in the last tutorial, we learned about how we could use blocks to pretty much use parent and child classes to allow the use of a layout template. Today I'm going to make the use of this file a lot more relevant and how it is more useful than it was in the last tutorial. So first off, as I said before, we're going to be learning about the proper way of rendering out or pointing to static files. So by default or by documentation wise, this static folder that we've mentioned right here in our Flask initialization is set to a folder called static. So instead of having to do this, let's go with the default behavior. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is in my app.py, since I've specified and changed my static folder to images, I've only now realized that instead of only having images, I'm also going to have static files such as JavaScript files and some of my CSS files too. So I can't store that all in an images folder because that just doesn't make sense. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is delete this off. And once I delete this off, what happens is that my static folder by default is going to be a folder called static. So what I'm going to do is go in my editor section right here and then create a new folder. Not in templates, but in my main directory. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and I'm going to call that folder static. Now in my static folder, I'm going to put all the static stuff. So my images that are static to this website are going to go in this. I'm going to drag it in my static folder and move it in there. So as you see right here, static folder, I've got images. So static folder and images. So static folder, and in the static folder there's images. Cool. So in my static folder, I'm also going to have another new folder that's going to be called styles. So in my styles folder, I'm going to be storing the different style sheets that I'm going to be using, or the CSS style sheets that I'm going to be using. So let's go ahead and create a new CSS file by typing in main.css, which is going to pretty much include the main styling for my website. Now we'll come back to that file a bit later. So as of now, if I run my server, so if I go to cmd cd, let me zoom in a bit, cd desktop, cd my website, because that's where my app.py file is. And then if I do, I'm going to enable debugging so that we don't have to keep restarting the server. And then I'm going to run my server. Now let's go ahead and quickly open up a Chrome window and let's go localhost 5000, because that's where my website's being hosted. So as you see right here, if you refresh the first time, due to the fact that Flask works with a cache that is being used by Chrome a lot, you might be able to see that your images load up just fine. But then what you want to do is every time you refresh your website, make sure you're hard refreshing it by pressing Control first and then F5. So you need to press Control first and then F5 to hard refresh, which pretty much resets the cache as well. So all the recent changes will show up rather than it being the website being stored in the cache and showing you an out-of-date version. So make sure you press Ctrl plus F5 and then you'll notice that your images have disappeared. Now this is because we have taken off the static folder name from being the images folder. So we can deal with that problem quite easily. Now, as I said before, the proper way of doing this is by using URL4, which is a class that already exists at Flask. So I'm going to go in my app_blueprint file, which pretty much includes the different routes to my, so I'm going to Ctrl B there. It includes the different routes, so my home route, my about page route, and my contact route, and it also includes the rendering of my files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from Flask, import blueprint render template, and I'm also going to import URL4, which is another class we're going to be using to point to our directories or the files that we want. So once I'm done with that, I'm done with my app_blueprint file. I can close that off. Now let's go back to my file explorer, and in my templates I'm going to go in my index.html because that's the main website showing all our featured products. So our featured products, right now the images link is broken. That's mainly because we are trying to access this product.img, which is img is just the property of our product dictionary, which is coming from here. So if I open this, it's coming from popular products, and it's running through all of these different key value pairs, and then it's getting the img key value. So the value is pretty much the directory, so /images.jfif. So it pretty much gets that. So I'm going to close that off since I explained that. Now, since that doesn't work out very well, since we got rid of the static folder being custom, what we need to do is in this code block we're going to type in url4. Now this is due to best practice. So url_4, the class that we just imported, 2 brackets. Then in here we want to type in our first argument to be in double quotes, static. And then the second argument is going to be the file name. So now the first argument is static because we're saying use the static folder. Now don't change this to anything else because it won't work. By default it just looks for what the static folder has been set to. Since we haven't set it to anything, it just looks for the static folder, which is right here. So now if I set the file name, I'm going to go ahead and type in the file name of my image. Now as I said, it's hunting it from product, and then it is going to do product.img, which will give it the image address since this is running through a loop. Now hopefully this works first time. Let's make sure everything's in there. It looks fine. Let's go ahead and refresh our page. So if I go back in my store and my hard refresh, as you see right here, that has worked out completely fine. Now you may have noticed that every time you're linking a new item such as a hyperlink or an image, you would have to use url4 since we are not using a specific folder being made public. So it's a lot better than doing that. So that's how you do that. And now to the actual bit of making our website look prettier by linking a CSS file to it. So to link a CSS file, what we need to do is, as you notice here, we don't really have a head section. So the head section is where the CSS file would usually be stored. Now we don't have a head section because obviously we are inheriting that from the layouts.html page, as that is the basic layout followed by all websites. So we're going to use that. So layout.html is where this is being inherited from. What we're going to do in the head section is go ahead and import a CSS file. Now this CSS file is going to be importing pretty much all the child elements that extend the layout.html file. Since if I open here, it says extends layout.html, it's going to have the CSS file, so every file that says that. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a link tag, so link rel equals style sheet, type equals text /CSS, and then href equals. Now in the href you need to specify the directory to where you can find your style sheet. So your style sheet is going to be found in your static folder, and when you go in your static folder you have another folder called styles, so you're going to do a /styles, and then you're going to do a / and call the main style sheet, which is, I am assuming, main.css. So I'm going to type in main.css in here, and this should just load up the style sheet on pretty much all the website files that we have. Now let's make sure it's doing that by minimizing this and hard refreshing. So Control F5. Now let's zoom in a bit here. I'm going to right click and inspect, and if we go to the head section, as you see right here, we have link rel equals style sheet text CSS, and the href is styles and main.css. Now there are a few errors here. .css, so it wasn't able to load it for some reason. Let's go ahead and see why it wasn't. Main.css. I might have spelt something wrong, or it's just not refreshed, I'm assuming. Okay, let's try and restart our Flask server. So let's do that, and then let's refresh. Okay, it's still not able to grab the CSS file. Let's go ahead and see why. Maybe we need to add some content to the CSS file. So I'm going to go ahead and add something in here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a h1 tag. Oops, where am I tabbing in? What's this? Get rid of that. I'm going to go in my styles and in my main.css, and I'm going to set properties for my h1, h2, h3, h4 and h5 tags. So all of these tags are going to have a font family of Arial, and then they're going to be colored in black. Cool. So if these properties are applied to pretty much all these header tags, that means it's working. Let's refresh, and clearly it is not working. So let's go ahead and see why that's happening. Styles. So if I go back to my layout.html, and okay, so clearly I have forgotten to use URL4. So this is the main issue. Every time you're linking any file right now, you're gonna have to use URL4 so that it recognizes the URL we're going for. So in here we're going to go ahead and add a code block by doing double curly braces, and then we're going to do URL_4 with a bracket in the start and a bracket in the end, and we're following the same syntax. So the static folder is still called static, and then we're going to do comma file name equals, and then we do not need speech marks. Yes, we do need speech marks, but single quotes actually. So we need single quotes since this is not like a declared variable. So let's save this up, refresh our page, and it's still not found it for some reason. Let's go ahead and see why that is. So it's still pointing towards the right address. So URL4 static file name equals /styles main.css. So let's go ahead and refresh our server. Gonna do this, Flask run, refresh, and it is still not able to find it. Let's go ahead and see what we've done wrong. Let's see. So I've got my static folder, I've got my static images, and then we've got the static. Oh, I see. So what's going on in here is my static folder, the styles folder is technically being placed inside the images folder for some reason. So I need to move that out, and I need to move that in my static folder. So move that there, and as you see now, these two folders, so images and styles, are in the static folder. Before that, the styles folder was in the images folder for some reason. Let's go ahead and hard refresh now, and as you see right here, the error has disappeared, and my website text, so all of the text that had H1 to H5 has changed to the right font, apart from, I'm assuming, a specific, yeah, so this is a p tag, that's why it hasn't changed. So we can change that too by going ahead in our code, in our style sheet. So we can go in our main.css and do a comma p, and now if I refresh, the price has changed as well. Cool. So I mean the discounted rate has changed as well. Cool. So let's add a few more basic changes to the styling. Let's go ahead and do body, and for the body we're going to do background color of, let's just do gray, light gray. Let's do light gray, and then I'm going to do that should be fine. Let's go ahead and refresh. So we've got a little bit of a change. We've got a sort of light grey background going, and then we have our different products here. Now you can make different CSS changes in here to any element you have on your different websites, because this style sheet right here will be imported into pretty much all your websites, so including about and contact us. So if I do /about, it will show me that, and as you see, the changes have been applied, so the CSS is being applied. And then if I do /contact, the same applies here. So as you see, the changes have been applied. Background is grey and the font is being changed as well. So that is working perfectly fine. That is the main advantage of actually using a template, because now we don't have to import the CSS file separately in all the files. We just do it once in this layout.html file. So it's quite basic and simple. Right, so that was the end for today's tutorial, guys. Hope you have been enjoying this entire series. I'm really sorry about the miss on the upload yesterday, but you probably did not realize anyway, since this is not the biggest YouTube channel in the world. Once again, guys, thanks for all the support you've been showing me in the recent tutorials. If you guys have any new ideas on future tutorials, drop them in the community tab under my post. If you guys would directly like to support the channel, you can do so by either purchasing a super chat emoji or a highlighted message when this video premieres, or you can also sign up as a patron using the Patreon link in the description, as this really helps the channel grow. You can also consider following up my socials and joining the Discord chat for a lot of fun. And as always guys, I will see your beautiful faces with another Flask tutorial in the next video. Peace! So in this video we're going to be going through how to use CSS to pretty much make a website look pretty and similar to the websites you usually browse. So if you haven't already watched the Flask series that have been created, I really recommend you do, as it's going to be linked in the description as a playlist. So go ahead and watch that, because these tutorials are linked together. If you only want to learn how to use a few styling elements in CSS and make your website look pretty, go ahead and just watch this tutorial. So first off, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code where I'm going to be having my website. So let's give this a moment to load up, and I'm going to close my previously opened file because I was working on it before. I'm going to close this folder, and what I'm going to do is open my folder. So I'm going to go File, Open Folder, and then I know where it is, so I'm going to go on my desktop, into YouTube, and I'm going to have to find it in the last tutorial that I posted. So pretty much we're working with the my folder, my website folder, where all my website assets are. So we have worked in a way where in the last tutorial we were able to learn how to pretty much render static files. So we were able to render static images and static style sheets. So we were able to link a style sheet to pretty much all the web pages that we have, so all the templates. So in this tutorial we're mainly going to be messing with the main.css file to pretty much add more styles to it. So as you can see, it's pretty much got only two different stylings, so for the body and for the different header tags. We're going to be changing that to make our website look a lot more decent. I'm going to zoom in first of all before I forget. And then what I'm going to do is, apart from our main.css, I'm also going to open up my index.html page, which is the main page that I have going, and I'm also going to open up my layout.html page, which is pretty much used by all my HTML pages. So this layout page right here is inherited by each and every page that is in my templates folder. Now I'm going to go ahead and run my site to show you what it looks like currently, so that you have a rough idea of what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to have to go to cd. I'm going to quickly open up my directory, so File Explorer, and I'm going to copy and paste that in here instead of having to manually browse to it, because that will take me forever. YouTube, Kadena, part 6, code, my website. Let's grab this, so Control C, I'm grabbing the location of it, and then I'm going to change my location to that. Cool. So wait, first of all I need to do that, and now we're in the folder. So what I need to do is type in set Flask, and then I'm going to do set Flask debug equals 1, so that we enable debugging. So this way we don't have to keep refreshing the server, and the server will pretty much run and handle the error by just showing it as an exception instead of crashing completely. Now lastly I'm going to do Flask run, and the server should be running now. Cool. So if I go ahead and open up a Chrome window, I should hopefully be able to show you what we got up to in the last tutorial, which is a pretty ugly looking website. So this is what we had in the last tutorial. I'm just going to press Ctrl F5 to make sure that these are all the changes. So as you see, we were going for a sort of online store that we're creating for my merch. Obviously this is fake and just for the project. Now, it would be nice if these featured projects, or the popular products I mean, were shown in line. So instead of having to scroll through them, obviously these do fit, so they fit horizontally instead of being vertical. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be putting all of these products into a little box, and then we're going to give the box a white color, and then we're going to place the box in the center of our screen while having this in line. So instead of having this in a row, we're going to have it in a column. Cool. or however, if I've said it wrong, we're going to have it in a, let me see, row column. I usually get confused with this. So we are going to have it in a row. So we're going to have this show up in a row. So the products are going to be in a row in that box. So first up, what we have to do is go ahead into our layout.html, and in there we have to, actually we need to go in our index.html because that's where the products are showing up. So in here, what we have to do is actually, I've already done it here for some reason. Why is that? Main.css. Okay, so what we have to do in here is, I'm going to get rid of the bit that I've done already so that we can do it together. So this is the code that you should have by default. So what I'm going to do in here is, as you see right here, this is where the for loop starts and this is where the for loop ends. And the section between them displays each product as its own entity, which shows the price of the product, the name of the product, and the picture of the product. So we want to wrap all of this into a div. So div is like a container that holds, that can hold multiple elements together. So we're going to hold all of these elements. So these elements right here, we're going to hold them in a div, and we're going to give it a class name of, let's give it a class name of featured products container. Now we're going to give it a class name of featured products container because obviously this is going to hold the different featured products that we have, and we're going to end the div right at the end of the for loop. So we're going to now go ahead and indent this appropriately so that it can look nice. Now inside there, what we want to do is we also want to have another div in there, which is pretty much going to hold the different products. So we have a div for the products container, and we need to have a div for the different products. So to do this, you want to go inside your loop, and in your loop you're going to create another div which is going to have a class name of featured products. Cool. So we have a featured products container which holds all the products, and we have a featured products div which only holds each individual product. Now this needs to be inside the loop, so bear in mind you need to close the div tag appropriately. So the featured products div should be after the for loop, and the featured products container is after the for loop, and the featured products is inside the for loop, so it needs to match. Cool. So once you're done doing that, what you want to do is we're going to be styling this. So let's go in our main.css file, since we've already grabbed this together. What we want to do in here is we're going to be going to our featured products container and calling that class in here. So the div we just created, we can call it in here. So we just type in the name, and when you use dot, that just means you're referencing to a class. If you use hashtag, it means you're referencing to an ID. Since we use a class, we're going to use dot, and then we're going to type in the class name, which is featured products container. Now what we want to do is I'm going to set a width of 80%, and then I'm going to set a background color of white. So these are different properties in CSS that you can set to your elements. Now this is going to be an entire element of all the products that we have. Let me go ahead and show you what this does. So if I refresh, as you see right here, it's gone ahead and put white background all around the featured products container, which holds all the products. So nothing else is white, only this bit. And it's gone ahead and given it a width of 80%. As you see, it's limited. It's not all over the page. It's only half, almost 3/4 of the page. That's because we've limited the width. Now we also want to put it in the middle, which is when we're going to be using the display block code. So we're going to type in display block, which means we want it to display in a specific manner that it can be, it's like in presentation or PowerPoint when you do text wrap into square or tight, it's something like that. It allows us to put it in the center. And then we set the margin to 0 and then type in auto. So these two lines of code, line 13 and line 14, are going to help us put the div in the center of our screen. So I refresh my page, so remember Control and F5. As you see right here, it has put the div in the center of my screen. So that's looking good as well. Now what we want to do is we want to grab the products, individual products, and then put them in line, so in a row. So we want to put them in a row instead of columns because it looks a bit weird at the moment, and it will also save a lot of screen space for us. So to do that, we are going to have to refer to the class that we created for the featured products, which was featured products. So dot featured products. Now this may be different for you if you change the class name, so make sure you take that in mind as well. So to display it in a row, we're going to do display inline block because we want it to display inline and we want it to also be block. And then we're going to do text. Okay, let me show you what each line does. So if I do inline block, it will pretty much show up next to each other, which is what inline block means. Now, what I want to do here is, as you see right here, this text is all the way to the left. So all the text is all the way to the left. I want to put it in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in text align and then type in center. Now, if I refresh, so Control F5, as you see, the text goes to the middle and it's looking a lot better than it did before. Now, you might say it's pretty close to each other, so we might want to add a bit of spacing as well, which is exactly what we're going to do. So before we add some spacing, as of now, these divs right here, so these divs that hold each product, are on a width of 100%, which pretty much means that they're only going to take as much space as they need. We're going to specify a specific width for them so that they don't run over our main container. Now we're going to give it a width of 25%, so it's going to be 25% of whatever window size it is. So it's going to inherit 25% of the container div. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a margin left, so it's going to leave some space from the left, and we're going to do 5%. Now we could have done 5 pixels, but pixels is a static amount, whereas percent is dynamic, so it will adjust according to the size of the window, which is why we're going to be using percent. Let me refresh this, and as you see right here, it's gone ahead and left a 5% gap from the left. So this product has left a 5% gap, this product has left a 5% gap, and so has this one from the left. Now if I reduce my window size, as you see right here, the website is scaling as well. So the website is scaling, the divs go smaller, and the products as well, they're shrinking. So as you see, the size reduces to only 20% of the container width. Now you might say the image looks messed up, because obviously it is. That's because we haven't added any scaling to our image. We can fix that in a second. So to fix that, all you need to do is, since we have only few images, we're just going to refer to it directly using the tag name, which is image. Now this will target pretty much all the images that we have on our website. So what we're going to do is we're going to use featured products, and then we're going to do space and then type in image. Now what this is going to do is it's only going to target images that are in the featured products class, not all of the images on our website, which is what we want to do. So we're going to do position relative, so that it's relative to the div it's in, and then we're going to set a width of 50% of whatever its parent div is. So now if I refresh this page, as you see, the images are reducing size to 50% of their parent div. So their parent div is this product, is this featured product div we have right here. So it's the 25% of this. So it's a lot of math being involved, but as soon as you start coding in CSS, which is not really hard, you get used to the concept. Now obviously the text is a lot bigger than you expect, because you can change that using media queries. If you'd like to learn about media queries and how to change the text and other elements, you can drop me a comment and I will do a tutorial on that. But as of now, it's looking pretty good because we're scaling the website on different screen sizes and it is scaling perfectly fine. Cool. Now since this is looking fine, what we're going to be doing next in this tutorial is also going to be adding a navbar to the layout.html, which is going to be applied to pretty much all pages. So the navbar, which is going to hold like hyperlinks to go to your about, contact and homepage, is going to be on all the pages obviously. So we're going to add that to our layout.html page so that it can be applied to everything. So let's go to our layout.html page, and then in there what we're going to have to do is actually add a new code block so that it can be inherited by all the HTML files that we have. So where we want to have our, so where do we want to actually have our hyperlinks? So for me, I want to have my navbar at the very top over here. So I want to have the navbar on the left, and then I want to have this Johan's store and best merch in the game in the middle. So I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So what I want to do first off is I'm going to, after the body tag, I'm going to create a block which is going to be specifically for my navbar. So I'm going to do block and I'm going to do nav just as a short form, and then I'm going to copy and paste that line and end the block for nav as well. Now in this, as I said before, I want to have the Johan's store and best merch in the game text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in my index file right here, and I'm going to grab that text. So I'm going to grab this from content because right now it's in the content block. I'm going to grab that right here, Let's get rid of this. And what I'm going to do is go in my layout.html and I'm going to paste it in my nav. So I want it to be at the top instead of in the content. So if I refresh now, nothing's going to happen obviously because it's still on top. But if I add some color and the hyperlinks later, this will all make sense. So as of now, nothing's going to happen, but we are on the right track. So obviously another change that will happen is since it's in the layout.html and we have a block nav, what's going to happen here is that it's going to be shifted to all pages. So if I do this on about, it's going to have it there as well. So obviously you need to have this because you'd have like basic information in your nav, such as your logo, maybe socials and such other things, depending on obviously how you want your website to look. Now if I do contact, it should have it as well. Cool. So what we want to do now is go back to our homepage and work on there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add the links to my different pages. So I can do that by simply creating an anchor tag, and we're going to be using URL4, which we learned about yesterday. So in the href, we're going to do a code block where we're going to do URL4, and then we're going to do, now in here, if you guys remember and if you've been watching from the start, we imported blueprint and then we called it app_blueprint. So if I go to my app blueprint file right here, as you see, this is the app blueprint variable, or which is initializing this class into an object. So we're going to be using this app blueprint object that is already rendered to pretty much access the different routes that we have. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be typing URL4 app_blueprint. Now you have to you have to type in the name of your variable that holds the app blueprint object. So you use that and then use dot whatever page you want to access. So I'm going to do dot index because that's my index page. I want to access my index page at the moment, and I'm going to give this hyperlink a name of home because that's my home page. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it twice because I have 3 URLs in total, and then I'm going to change this app.blueprint to .about because that's my about page, and I'm going to change this to about, and I'm going to change this to contact because that's my contact page, and this should change as well. Oops. Contact with the capital C, of course. Cool. Now let's put this back and let's see if this works. So refresh, and as you see right here, this is on the top in the nav bar and this is too. So if I click on home, we are refreshing because this is the home page. If I click on about, we have been reached to the about page, and if I click on contact, we are being redirected to the contact page. So that's working perfectly fine. Now let's go ahead and style this nav bar just to bring kind of a nice end to this tutorial and make the website look a bit better. So let's go into our CSS files, as you may have already guessed, and we're going to be styling our nav bar. So before we do anything, what you actually want to do is create a nav container. So as we did for our products, featured products, we created a container. So we're going to do that. So let's go in on layout.html. And in here, what we want to do is create a new class. A new div. So at the start of the nav, we're going to create a new div. I can start a new div with a class by just typing in dot, and then it creates everything for me. I can type in nav container because that's going to be the container that stores all the information for my navigation bar. And then I'm going to close it to the right indent, which is right here, and it's going to store all of this content. So these two, this header tag, this paragraph tag, and the anchor tags. Cool. Now I have something to call, so I'm going to go back in my main.css file, and I'm going to call my navigation container. So dot nav container. Oops. And then what I'm going to do first off is I'm going to probably take off the text decoration. So as you see right here, this hyperlinks look a bit ugly because they by default have like an underline and all that. So if you want to take that off, you need to use a property called text decoration, and you can set that to none, and it should pretty much take off those ugly lines. Okay, it hasn't. Let's refresh. Okay, that's because we need to access the hyperlink separately, so we'll do that in a second. This nav container is for the entire container, so it includes content from here to here. So first off, what we're going to do for this is we are going to add a background color so that we know what the container looks like. So background color black. Let's refresh the page. And as you see right here, this is what the container looks like. And you might say there's a bit of space from the top and from the left. Now we can get rid of that space by going into our body and then typing in margin 0, because by default they add a bit of margin. And if I refresh, that is gone. And I just need to find out why there is a bit more space right here, which I'm going to find out right now. Let's see, body, HTML, display block. We've got a nav container right here, we've got the center, and then we've got the URL. So I'm going to, what's the error? Okay, that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try adding a padding of 0 as well. Doesn't work as well. Maybe there is some content there that we can't really see at the moment. Well, maybe there is some content there that we can't really see at the moment. Well, we'll fix that in a moment anyway. So what we have to do right now is figure out how we want to display the nav container. So we've set the background to black, and in there what we want to do is, before we do anything in here, I'm going to make the hyperlinks in there white so that we can actually see. So I'm going to do nav container and then A, because A for hyperlinks, anchor tag, and then I'm going to set the text decoration to none. As I said, that takes off the underline and ugly stuff from the default anchor tag. Set the font size to 20 pixels, so pretty obvious stuff. Set the font family to Arial, which is pretty much the same font family that's being used around the website. I'm going to add a padding. Okay, let me do a color of white, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. So if I refresh now, as you see right here, this is what the website currently looks like. So the links are very close to each other, which is why I'm going to add a padding so that they can be a bit spaced out. So I'm going to add a padding of, not right, just padding in general, 20 pixels, so that it's a bit spaced out from each other. If I refresh, as you see, they are spaced out from each other now. Now what I want to do next is, that's it for the anchor tag. What I want to do next is find out what tags are in here. So let's go ahead and highlight this, and we're going to inspect. So what do we have in there? We have H1, and we have, where's the other one? H1 and we have paragraph. So what we're going to do is go in here, and then we are going to go into our nav container once more, and this time we're going to call H1 and our paragraph tag, and then we're going to set the color to white. So this should technically overwrite the previous styling that it had, unless, okay, never mind, it doesn't do that. So what we can do is we can just get rid of the H1 right here. So what we're going to do is get rid of that and get rid of this, and we're going to do a separate one for H1 and paragraph. So H1 comma P, where the color is going to be white. Now obviously you could have used classes and stuff, but I'm just running a bit, we have already spent a lot of time on this tutorial, so we're not going to do that. Now I'm going to have to also copy the font family in here, so I'm going to copy and paste that. And as you see, we have a nice looking nav bar right now. So you might say that there is some space from, we should probably give it a bit more height, right? So that's what we're going to be doing next. Let's go in our nav container right here, and we're going to give it some height. So we're going to do padding top, which means it's going to give it some height from the top, and we're going to do 20 pixels there. And we're going to do padding bottom to be 20 pixels so that it gives it some more height as well. Now if I refresh, as you see, the padding top pretty much covers the top bit. Now it's nicely hidden, and we have, this is nicely centered as well, whereas the hyperlinks are showing up nicely too. Now it would look nice if we had some kind of hover animation so that when we hover over the links, it kind of shows something there. So that's what we're going to be doing next. Let's go ahead in our main.css. And now what we want to do for the hover animation is that we want to go and type in A for anchor tag, and then type in hover, which is the magic keyword to pretty much create an action when the user hovers over it. So it's an event. And then what we want to do on hover is we want to create a border at the bottom of the hyperlink, which is going to be red in color. It's going to be 5 pixels thick, and it's going to be solid. So there's different options such as dotted and stuff, but we want it to be solid. Now let's refresh, and as you see there's nothing changed, but when we hover over, there is a little red line that is showing up, which is the border bottom that we just created. Now if I go over to my about page, this is consistent on all pages, so this nav bar is going to be consistent throughout my website because that's just how the layout.html page has been made to work. So it is so that all the other HTML files inherit the details from it. So this is looking pretty interesting right now. So this is the basic website that we have going. It looks decent because we have a nice nav bar. This body could probably improve a bit, but for now we'll roll with it. Obviously I'm going to show you a few more things that you can do in Flask and more fundamentals before we can jump onto an actual project. But I thought it would be cool if we made our store website look a bit better and then started working on it and treat it like an actual store. Anyway guys, that was it for today's tutorial. Hope you have enjoyed it and learned a lot about CSS. If you guys have enjoyed the tutorial, please make sure to like, comment, share and subscribe, because sharing is very important. You guys have really smashed it in the last month when I was uploading every day. I'm going to try to upload at my 6 PM schedule as much as possible, but it's going to be a bit difficult at the moment due to me just starting my new job as well. If you guys would like to donate the channel directly, you can do so by either signing up as a patron using the Patreon link in the description, or you can purchase a super chat emoji or a highlighted message when this video premieres. Like always guys, I would like to thank you for all the support you've been showing me, and I'm very grateful for it. And I will see your beautiful faces in the next Flask tutorial. Peace! In today's tutorial, we're going to be doing something really interesting, which is creating an API. Which is going to be based on an EPOS system. So this is going to be a really basic tutorial on showing you guys how to create a really basic API using Flask, and the API is going to be around the concept of a restaurant management system or an electric point of sale system, which is EPOS. So to begin with, what I want you guys to do is open up command prompt so that we can install all the required modules such as Flask, which will allow us to basically host our API. So first off, open command prompt, and for me, I usually like to open it as administrator to basically avoid any errors and stuff that can happen. So open it as admin and then pip install Flask. Now it's going to do its thing. For me, it already says requirements satisfied because I've already installed Flask before actually starting this tutorial. So that's one of the things you're going to need, along with another module that's called Flask_RESTful. So this module basically lets us create a RESTful API, meaning that it's going to give us the ability to create, delete, update, or I'm forgetting another word, or read data from the API. So that's basically what an API is in general. It lets you request or post data to it based on different endpoints, and you can also do other fancy stuff with it. So enough of me talking, let me actually install this. And as you see again, it's saying requirement already satisfied because I've already got this installed before actually starting this tutorial. So once you've got both of this installed, we're actually good to go. So I'm going to close down command prompt, go ahead into Visual Studio Code, and then open up a new file, save that as, I'm just going to save it to my desktop for now, call that eposapi.py, and then save that up. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so that it's easier for you guys to see. And the first things we're going to do is actually import all the modules / libraries that we're going to need to basically code this API. So first things first, import from Flask. We want to import the Flask class and then the request. We might not actually end up using request, but we'll just import it anyway. The second thing you want to do is from Flask_RESTful, you want to import resource and API. Now these two classes are basically going to let us look at the different data that's being passed in by the user, as well as just handle different actions of the API and initialize the API itself. So once that's done, we also want to import another thing from Flask RESTful, which is basically going to let us pass the data that's being given to us while users do post requests. Now I'm going to explain that a bit more in depth a bit later when we actually code the post requests. Now post request is nothing more than just the user wanting to store some data into a database. So they basically send that data to an API, then the API will post that data, save it up in a relevant table somewhere in the database so that it's saved. So we're gonna, from Flask request, we're gonna import request pass. Basically what it does is it passes all the requirements or parameters that are passed by the user, and then it will give it to us as a dictionary, but I will explain that in the end. First things first, we want to initialize the Flask class and the API library. So this is just part of the setup before we actually start coding the actual meat of the system, which is going to be a few functions and classes, but we have to first of all initialize Flask, and then the API needs to be attached to the Flask web server as well. So to start with, we create a new variable called app and then assign that to the Flask class that we just imported, and then we will have to pass in name as a parameter as well. Now the next thing we want to do is actually attach this API. So the API module needs to be wrapped around Flask because it was built on it. So what we need to do is create a new variable called API, equals that to capital A because that's the class, API, and then we need to assign that to app. So basically what that does is it wraps around the Flask web server or the Flask class. That's all the initialization stuff done. Now what we want to do next is, just for the sake of this tutorial and to keep it simple, I'm not actually going to implement this with a database, but rather save all the data into a dictionary. So I'm going to create a dictionary that's going to be called, just let's call it database for now. Well, actually, let's call it RMS, which will stand for Restaurant Management System. And then that's just going to be a blank dictionary for now. Now, in the dictionary, what we could have saved is things to do with the restaurant, because an EPOS system will of course have to remember things about the restaurant, such as the restaurant name, the phone number, the address, and so on. And the main sort of thing that the EPOS system will have to remember or must remember is the different items on the menu, the pricing of the item on the menu, and then the inventory, such as the item, so the quantity of the item. So let's start by creating a default key in here, which is going to be called restaurant. And then the value of that key is just going to be, let's say, another dictionary, which is going to be name. And we can call our restaurant KFC for now, because it's quite a popular one. Then we can create another key for phone number. And the value would just be a random string. So 0789 something something something. And then we can create another key for address. Now obviously you can be as creative as you want, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to create 3 keys and values inside this restaurant key. So I'm going to do something like 122, that for now. So we've got a restaurant, we've got the restaurant details. So we've got the restaurant details saved up into the RMS dictionary. Nicely done. Now we're just going to put a comma in here, and then I'm going to create a new key called menu. Now this key called menu is basically going to store all the details, such as the different items on the menu, and then the quantity of those different items as well. So just as an example, we're going to end up with this item whenever we start our server. So as an example, inside this menu dictionary, I'm going to add a key, which is going to be called, let's say, wings. And then we'll assign that to another dictionary. So basically, we've got menu, which is the key that's inside RMS, and then we've got wings, which is part of menu. So it's actually the first item in menu. Now, since wings is a key and the value of wings is another dictionary, we could add some more details in there, such as the price. So obviously each item will have to have a price, and let's say wings are pretty expensive and they're £5.50 for now. And then another important one could be quantity or remaining, or you could just call it quantity. I'm just being very specific and calling it quantity remaining. and then I'll do something like 30 for now. So that basically will be the structure of our RMS sort of dictionary that's acting as our database for now. In a real life scenario, you would obviously save these details into an actual SQL database or a non-relational database such as MongoDB. But just for the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to save it into a short dictionary. Now the API will obviously let us read the data from this RMS dictionary and give it to the user based on different endpoints, update the data in this dictionary, and also delete and add more data to this dictionary. So we're mainly going to be focusing on this menu dictionary here. So once this dictionary is done, this is sort of a preset or template because we want to have something in it when we start the server, otherwise it's going to get really confusing. So once we're done with that, what we need to do next is let's create a class which is basically going to be called restaurant. So our class is going to be called restaurant, and then inside the class what you want to do is, as an argument, pass in the resource class that we imported earlier. So up here we imported the resource class from Flask RESTful. We need to pass that class into our restaurant class right here. Now once we do that, there are specific class names that are reserved in here that basically represent different requests. So basically I said class names, but what I actually meant is methods, because since we're in classes we can create different methods or functions. So the specific names that have been reserved for certain requests. So if I did def and then get, which basically stands for a get request, and then I can basically type in self and then something like return, and I'm gonna say welcome to RMS. So what I've just now done here is I've created a class and then passed in resource as the parameter, and then inside class basically what Flask will do, or Flask underscore RESTful will do, is it recognizes get as an inbuilt sort of method that will be a get request. So every time a get request is made and this class is run, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be returning a string called welcome to RMS. Now obviously this is not just magically going to work, so we have to sort of assign this to something before we actually get it to work. So what we need to do is we need to create sort of a map for all of this to be shown. So there's different endpoints on an API based on which data is shown. So we're going to be creating those endpoints right now. So we're going to be calling this mapping classes to different endpoints, right? So let's call it that for now. And then earlier we created a variable called API, which was assigned to the API being initialized. So we're going to be using that to basically map. So we're going to do API.addResource, which is like adding a page or adding an endpoint, if whichever way you want to think about it. And then in this, what you need to do is provide the API with a class that it can basically run. So I'm going to say the class I want it to run is called restaurant, and it's obviously up here so it's readable. And then I'm going to say the endpoint I want this to trigger on is going to be /. So basically what that means is every time a user loads up just a default page of my Flask server, they'll end up on this endpoint, which is /, and then this restaurant class will be run. Now when the restaurant class is run, the Flask library is going to go, oh, is there any requests in here that I can deal with? And it's going to see the get requests right here. And then it's going to say, okay, I've got a get request, so I'm just going to return to the user, welcome to RMS. Now that's the very theory sort of explanation of it, but it will make more sense once I start the server. Now there's only another step to actually starting the server, which is adding the main guard or the name guard. So we do if name is equal to main, and then we'll do app.run. So app is obviously the initialization of the Flask sort of web server, and then we're going to do debug is equal to true. Now the reason we do debug is equal to true is because if there's any errors while running the server won't crash. It's just going to show us what the error is, and then it's just going to carry on its operation unless it's like a serious syntax error in your Python code. So once you're done with this sort of statements, this could just be called starting the server and API that sits on it. Well, it's technically just starting the server. The API is automatically assigned to it. But anyway, starting the server, and then once I run this, as you can see, we get some messages, and then we get told what link to actually open as well. So this is the link that we want to sort of open up. So I'm going to copy that link, and what I'm going to do now is a really good way to actually view this would be opening up a browser tab and then pasting it in there and pressing enter. Now when you press enter, as you see, what it goes ahead and does is it says welcome to RMS. Now the reason it does that is because whenever we type in enter here, we're making a get request to /. So obviously we've mapped / and the get request to / with returning welcome to RMS. Now we don't want this to sort of be a thing, so we're going to get rid of that and actually start making our API a bit more practical. So I'm going to stop our server right now, and what I'm going to do is, instead of doing return welcome to server, I'm going to return the basically I'm going to return the full dictionary that we have. So I'm going to do something like return. I'll get rid of this. I'm going to do return, and then I'm going to say RMS because that's the name, and then I'm going to say restaurant. Now what that's going to do is it's going to return RMS, which is the dictionary, and restaurant, which is the key. So it's basically going to return the restaurant details. So it's going to say name, KFC, phone number, blah blah blah, and address, blah blah blah. So that's what it's going to do. Makes a bit more sense to have it in the API because the user can basically make a request and it will show up. Now, obviously we can change the endpoint to, instead of being /, we can do something like / and then restaurant. That makes more sense. So when the user goes to the address that the server is running on and does / restaurant, it's basically going to run this restaurant class, and then there's a get request in restaurant class right here, which says return the restaurant details. So let's run that again to see if it actually works. Open up Chrome. Back into ignore, and then I'm going to do localhost 5000, which is the equivalent of doing 127.0.0.1, and then I'm going to say restaurant, and as you see, it works pretty well. So now if I refresh this, it's going to say not found because we obviously got rid of the / root and we got the restaurant root in there. So if I did restaurant again, we get all the restaurant details. So as you see, name KFC, phone number, blah, 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 address, blah, blah, blah. So that's a basic get request and an endpoint done. So that's how you would create an endpoint and basically get a request, basically send a response back to a request as well. Now I'm going to close this off, and at this stage what I'm going to recommend you guys do is download something called Postman. So I'm going to type it in, and I think it's the first, it's the first result that actually comes up. So if you guys could actually download this, it would be pretty useful because that's what we're going to be using to further test our API along the line. Now it's nothing too complicated. This is what it looks like. So if I open it up, this is what it looks like, and it basically lets you make different requests to your API and lets you test it. So if I create a new request in here, so you click on new, click on request, and then or you don't even have to do that. You can just click on this add sort of tab button here, and then it will be called untitled request or whatever it is, and you type in the address where you want to make this request to. So 127.0.0.1 5000 / restaurant. Now the very important bit is you need to specify what type of request this is going to be. So it's already set to get, so hopefully that should be fine. Now when I click on send, you'll notice down here that I get the response with name KFC, phone number, blah blah blah, and so and so. So basically our request is gone through fine, and we've got a valid response as well. Cool. Now enough of the really basic stuff. What we want to do next is, let's just close this server down, and what I'm going to do next is add a menu class, which is going to help us get different items on the menu, because right now what we can do is we can only get the restaurant details, but what I want the API to be able to do is allow us to basically get all the menu items either individually or as a complete list as well. So let's start with being able to get individual details about individual items on the menu. So let's create a new class called menu, and I'm going to zoom out of the screen a bit because it's becoming a bit hard to code. I'm going to create a new class called menu, so class menu, and we always need to pass resource through because it's sort of like a dependency, it's the way it works. And then what we want to do is we're going to be creating a get request, and then we're going to call this self. Now when we do a get request and we want a specific we want details about a specific item, what we're going to be needing is to allow the user to actually add a parameter for a specific item. So we've got wings as our menu, right? So if we did something like this, menu, if we created an endpoint called menu, what we want to be able to do is do /menu/wings, press send, and then be able to get price details and quantity details about wings. So that's what we want to be able to do. Now obviously we don't know what the user is going to type at this endpoint, so we're going to need to be able to make this flexible so that it can be sort of like a variable. So what we want to do is go in here into the api.add_resource section, and then we're going to add resource, and what we're going to add is the menu class, and the endpoint is going to be / and menu, because that's the first endpoint we want the user to go to, then / again, and in greater than and smaller than size, I'm going to create this is sort of going to be a placeholder for whatever's typed in here. So it's sort of like a variable, so whatever you type in the link is going to get replaced in here. Now instead of just doing, now when we're coding the menu class, we've got self over here, but we can also get the item. So basically whatever the user enters over here is going to be passed in here. So when I do this and print item, for example, and let me run the server quick, it's running. Let's just make that bigger, make this a bit smaller, and I'm going to say I want to go to 5000 under menu and then wings. So when I send a get request to this endpoint, what we get is obviously it says null over here, but what you see over here is it says wings. So it actually knows what item is being typed in by the user. Now if I change this up to, let's say, burger, we should be able to get a response, well, get a print that says burger. Now we basically know the item that the user is adding on, so it shouldn't be too hard to progress onward. So what we want to do after this is we want to check if the item that the user has typed in is actually a valid item on the menu or not. So we're going to do a try and accept, because if the item is not valid, then we'll get a key error since we're checking it against the dictionary. So we're going to try returning RMS because that's the main dictionary, and then under menu we're going to try returning the item that the user has typed in, because if this item is a valid key such as wings, then it should show up the properties of it. If it's not, then we should have a key error. So I'm going to do something like accept key error, and then we're just going to return an empty dictionary saying that we don't have any data about the item that the user has just typed in. Let's go ahead and run this to see if it actually works. Okay, and now if I go menu burger, now bear in mind we don't actually have burger in our dictionary. If I just show that to you guys, let's go up here, we only have wings, and that too with a capital W. So when I send this, I should get just an empty dictionary back, which I do. So basically the API is going, oh, is burger a valid key in the menu dictionary? And it's saying nope. We get a key error, so it's going to return an empty dictionary. But on the contrary, if I typed in a valid menu item such as wings, it should return the price, which is 5.5, and then the quantity remaining, which is 30. Amazing. So we've got basically different endpoints and get requests working, and we've added a little bit of validation as well. So now that we've done all of that, what we could also do is be able to create a put request. So a put request is very simple. It basically just means update. So what if we wanted to update something from the menu? So let's say we wanted to change the price for wings, or we wanted to change the quantity remaining for wings. We could easily do that as well by creating a put request. So let's go in our menu class, and then create another method for a put request. So you may have already guessed, since get is called get, put is also called put. So we just type in put as a method, and then Flask will recognize that. Once again, self as a parameter, and then we're going to also need the item so that we can actually update the dictionary according to the item name. So first things first, what we want to do is we want to check if the item that's being typed in that the user wants to update is actually a valid item in our dictionary. So we can literally copy and paste the lines from before and paste it down here. So basically what we're doing is we're checking, instead of returning anything though, we're just gonna do try and then RMS menu item. So if it is a valid item, then the program will just continue. If it's not, then we're gonna get a key error, and we can return something like an error. And then we're gonna say item, whatever item they've typed in, does not exist on the menu. So we've added a bit of validation there. So we're checking whether the item that the user wants to update is actually part of the dictionary. If it's not, then we just return sort of like an error, and the function or method just stops there. Now, we actually need to be able to allow the user to add some arguments onto their post request so that we can update our dictionary with those arguments. So to deal with that, we need the request parser. So that's what I was talking about earlier on. So we need to first off initialize a parser. So we're going to call this parser, and that's going to be equal to req parse or request parse dot request parser. So it's the library we imported earlier on. So it's going to basically let us grab data that the user wants to send to us, and we can use that data to basically update our dictionary. Once you've initialized your parser and assigned it to a variable, the rest is pretty simple. We need to basically think about the different sorts of data that we want from the user. So one of them is obviously going to be the item. No, actually, one of them is actually going to be the price, because we already have details about the item from up here, so we don't really need to put it as an argument. So one of them is going to be the price, and one of them is going to be the quantity remaining. So that's the two arguments the user can make. So I'm going to say parser.add argument and then price. So basically what we're saying is we want the user to be able to add a price as an argument. And then we're also going to say parser.add arguments, and then I'm going to add a quantity remaining argument as well. Now you could have called this anything, but just for consistency purposes and for everything to make sense, I'm adding it as what it actually means. Now we've basically allowed the user to send us data about price and quantity remaining by doing this. Now once we're done with adding these arguments to the parser, we actually need to create a new variable called result, and then call parser, and then do .parse arguments. So what this will do is it will go ahead into the put request and check what data has been sent to us, and it's only going to filter out the user data, the data from the user for price and the user data for quantity remaining. The rest of the data that's posted to us put to us will just get ignored. Now the result variable is just going to be turned into a dictionary with basically the data that was sent to us by the user. So if I do print result at this stage, and then if we just run our server, we have an indentation error. So we go up here on line 27, back 1, and try again, and our server is running, which is good. Let's go back to Postman, and now what we need to do is I'm going to go onto menu and then wings, which is actually an item, and then I'm going to do a put request. Now if I send this off, what you'll see here is when I move this a bit to the left, you see that price is set to none. So as I said, result is going to turn into a dictionary, and it's basically going to look for these details, whether the user actually sends them or not. Now since the user didn't send any price details or any quantity remaining details in the put request, it's saying none. Now we've also added validation to make sure that it gives an error when we try to update or make a put request to something that doesn't exist. So if I did burger and send, the error that we created earlier shows up. It says error, burger does not exist on the menu. So that would be the section of code where we have a try and catch for the checking whether the item is actually a key from the menu. So that's good as well. Now, to be able to send data, you basically need to be on the right endpoint, such as Winx, because it's a valid item. And then put a question mark in there and then type in your first parameter. The first argument that we allowed the user to type or added to the request parser was price. So the user can type in price and then equals that to something like 20, for example. And then any other basically any other requirement, any other arguments or any other parameters that the user wants to add in, or any other data that the user wants to send to our API needs to be followed by an AND. So the other argument we added to the request parser was quantity remaining, so we need to make sure we're typing that correctly, and then we'll equals that to something like 200. Now what happens there is the price will be updated for Winx to 20 and the quantity remaining will be updated to 200, but we haven't actually done the updating bit yet. But when I do send, what you will notice is it no longer says price none, quantity remaining none. It will actually take whatever values I put in my put request, which is here. So I said price was 20, and as you see, it got that data. It says price is 20, and then I said quantity remaining is 200, and as you can see, it got that data. Now, what if I misspelled this? So if I said quantity something something, and then send again, it's actually going to say none, because in our request parser, we've created an argument for quantity remaining. So we need to be very specific when we're right here. So we need to be very specific when we are adding this data on. So since we're able to grab the data that the user wants us to update, the only thing left to do now is to actually update it in our dictionary. So result is what the user senses. So data that the user has sent to us, and then what we want to do next is update the dictionary with data the user has sent. Okay, cool. So now when we want to update the user dictionary, first off we need to make sure that the user has actually sent some data through, because we don't want to save nones into the dictionary, because if the user doesn't send any data, as you saw before, result gets set to none. So we're going to say if the result price is equal to none and the result quantity remaining is equal to none as well, then what we want to do is just return an error to the user that's going to say something like update either needs price or quantity or both, because obviously without them providing these details we can't really update it, and there's no point of them doing a put request if they're not going to give us the price and the quantity remaining that they want us to update. So that will handle that. And then as else, we can basically do the rest of the checks. So we can do an else statement up here, and then we're going to update the dictionary. So we're going to say updating dictionary, and then we can do an if here. So we can say if the result and price. So basically the price that the user data for price that the user sends us, if the data for price is not equal to none, which means it's valid data, then we want to go into the RMS dictionary, then onto the menu key, which will result to giving us access to the sort of child dictionary. Then we want to type in item, because the item would actually be a valid item since we've already checked that up here. So we want to go onto the specific item on the menu, and then we're going to do the price, and then we'll equal that to result price. So we're basically updating from our RMS dictionary the price for the item the user is on to the price the user wants to update it to. Now we do the exact same thing with the quantity remaining as well. So we're basically pretty much repeating ourselves over here, where we're checking to make sure that it's not none. and if it's not none, then we update it. So we say we go into menu, we go into the item the user is on, but this time instead of the price, we're going to update the quantity remaining. And then we'll set that to result and quantity remaining. Hopefully I haven't spelled that wrong anywhere. So that will basically update everything, and then we can go one indent back and return a message that says that we have successfully updated the item. So we can say something like item plus updated. So that will basically tell the user that we've updated whatever they wanted to update with whatever data they basically sent to us. So now that we've got the put working, which was quite long, but we've made sure that it's pretty robust, so we've added quite a bit of validation. We could have done without the validation, but there would basically expose our API to the user so that they can somehow break it, but we don't want that. So now when I run my server, if I go onto my put request, and I'm going to get rid of this, I'm going to change this to a get request and then send. And as you see, initially I haven't done a put request yet, but the price for my wings is 5.5 and the quantity remaining is 30. Now if I essentially, when I do the put request to wings and then I send new data, so if I said price is equal to 1000, which is crazy expensive for wings, but oh well, and then quantity remaining is equal to 1, so let's say we just had one pack left. When I do this put request, what we want it to do is basically update the dictionary on our Flask server. So the next time I make a request to menu wings, so when I make a get request to menu wings, I should see this stuff being updated. So when I send this off, voila, it says menu message wings updated. And then if I go ahead and get rid of all this stuff, because I'm about to change this to a get request and send it off, we actually don't see any updates for some reason, but we will figure it out. We don't see any updates on the price, but we do see an update on the quantity remaining. So let's take a look at the thing again. So we've got price is equal to 1000 and quantity remaining is equal to 1. Let's take a look at our code. So I'm pretty sure I might have spelled something wrong with the price. So if I said if result price is not equal to none, then we will go into menu, the item, and then update the price with the price that the user has sent to us. So that should be correct. I'm not sure why it is not. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm going to make another request, so another put request, and send it off. It says wings updated, so hopefully it will actually show up. Let's do a get request there, and it still shows 5.5. That is a bit weird, but we can figure it out because we still. Let me try another put request where we do quantity to one something, and then we'll do another put request, send. We'll go back to wings, do a get request, and obviously it does update, but the price for some reason isn't updating. I feel like it's going to be a really simple mistake that I have made. If I save this up, we've got RMS menu item price is equal to result price. Then let me just check up here. I've got price, then I have if result is none, and okay is equal to none, we give an error, else we do this. Don't seem to see anything wrong, but let's just try it again. So we'll go do a get request and it should be 5.5 and 30, which it is. We'll do a put request and then I'll send all the data that's required. So we've got price is equal to 1000 and quantity remaining is 10,000. Let's send that off. Do a get request, get rid of this data here, send again, and voila. Turns out it was just a need to refresh my server, which is a bit crazy because I would have been spending ages just to look for it. But either way, the put request is now successful because we've been able to update the price and quantity remaining for wings. Now if you had additional items, you'd be able to do that for them as well, which is pretty cool. Now we still need to go through two more methods, which is one of which is a post request and the other is a delete request. Once we're done with that, we have basically created a RESTful API that allows us to create, read, update, and delete, which is pretty cool. So now that we're done with the put request and it's working fine, we're going to go ahead and explore how we can basically delete a menu item using the API as well. So what we want to do is inside the menu class again, we're going to scroll down past the put request that we made, and I'm just going to check that I'm on the right indent. I am. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a class for delete. So def delete, and then we're going to pass in the self and item as well, because we want to know what item from the menu, of course, the user is trying to delete. So now we, like always, we check if the item is actually valid. So if it's actually in the dictionary. So check if the item is valid, do a try, and then RMS menu item. Now obviously if it doesn't exist, then we shouldn't get a key error. So except key error, return error, and then we can do item plus does not exist. So that will sort that out. So we're basically validating to make sure that the item is actually valid. And then what we want to do next is, if obviously the item is valid, then deleting item from the menu. So we just use the delete command or del, and then we do RMS menu and then item. Simple as that. So basically saying go to the RMS dictionary, go into the menu key, and then in the menu key, if you see another key called item, just delete it off. So obviously item is going to be replaced with whatever endpoint the user is on. And then we probably want to return a message to the user saying that the item has been deleted. So return message item plus space deleted. So that should look after the item being deleted, and that's how you would create a very simple and basic delete request as well. So let me run this up just to make sure that it's actually working. So server's running fine, which is great news. I'm going to do a get request to menu wings and then send it off. And as you see, price is 5.5 again, because obviously we restarted the server, so everything defaults back again. But obviously if I did a put request and updated the price and quantity remaining, that would work as well. So let me just do a put request and then put the price to something weird like 100, and then the quantity, we'll just do it, let's say 20. Let's send it off and go back into wings, do a get request, send, and obviously it's been updated. Now let's say we wanted to delete wings. The only thing that would need to change is the type of request. So we'd have to change the get request to a delete request, because that's how we've coded it. And then we're basically saying we want to go onto the menu, and then we want to go onto wings. So we want to delete wings. We want to make a delete request to the wings endpoint. So it basically deletes wings from our RMS dictionary. Send it off and let's hope it works. And it says wings deleted. Now if I change delete to a get request to try and get wings, let's send it off. And we get return nothing, because wings does not exist anymore since we just deleted it. And hence we basically get the empty dictionary since we coded it before. Now if I try to delete something that doesn't already exist, we should probably get an error. So I try to delete that, it says wings does not exist, which is perfect. We've coded validation for this as well. Amazing. So now the only bit that's left is to be able to create a post request where we're able to add new items onto the menu. As of now, we only have wings, which we manually added to the dictionary, but we want to be able to make a post request and then add those items to the menu. So let's close this off, and what we actually want to do for this is we want to create a new class, and I'm probably going to call the class, let's call it main for now. So let's go above here, and then obviously we have a menu class down there, but I'm going to create a new class, and then I'm going to call this main. Pass resource brew again, because that's important. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a post request, and then in the post I'm just going to pass self. Now, one thing you may notice is for a post request, you don't really need to be on an endpoint. We don't need to know where we're adding this. We just need to be on the menu endpoint, and then we can make a post request passing the details for the item name, the price, and the quantity remaining. So that's why we don't have item as an extra parameter here. Now that we have a simple post method in here, I'm going to add this to the API resources. So let's scroll down a bit, and then I'm going to do api.add resource, and then I'm going to say main, because that's the function I want it to run. And in main, what we want to do is we're going to assign it to the root /menu. So basically what that's going to do is going to say any post request or any requests that come under /menu are going to be forwarded to the menu class. So let's go up here, and we've got a post request. So let's start coding our post request. So what we need to do first is create a parser, because obviously we need to get the data that the user is sending. So like before, we have to create a parser. So I'm going to copy and paste the lines from before, because it's going to be very similar. Copy the parser and the bit where you add the arguments, and also copy the bit where you pass the user data. So I'm going to paste all of that in there. So we're basically creating a new parser to deal with all the data the user is going to be sending us. Now we need an extra argument, which is going to be the item. Since the user is adding a new item to the menu, obviously we want to know what the item is going to be. So item is going to be a new argument that the user can specify in their post request. And then once the result runs, result is going to turn into a dictionary that's going to have item, price, and quantity remaining. So we can simply add that to the RMS dictionary. Now we need to run a few checks. So we need to make sure that none of these items, so item, price, and quantity remaining, we need to make sure that none of them end up being none, because we want values in all of them. Otherwise it's going to be a bit weird. So we're going to run a validation. We're going to say if result item, basically the data the user sends us, if the item from the data is equal to none, or the price from the data is equal to none, or the quantity remaining from the data is equal to none, then we're just going to return an error, and the message to the error is going to be missing fields, right? Because we basically need all three fields in order to add an item to the menu. Makes sense, because we can't add an item without the price, and we probably shouldn't add an item without the quantity remaining, because that will ruin the integrity. So if this is not the case, and if all three items obviously have the data that they need, then we can go ahead and add this onto the dictionary pretty simply. So we're just going to do adding item onto RMS dictionary, and then we can do something like RMS, then onto the menu key, and then the next key is going to turn into the name of the item. So we're going to go into result and then item, because that's the name of the item. And then we're going to assign that to a new dictionary, for which the price is going to be the price that the user sent to us, so price. And the quantity remaining is going to be set to the quantity remaining that the user just sent to us. So basically all we're doing is we're going into the menu dictionary, adding a new key, which is the key name is going to be the item name that the user just sent to us using the post request. Then we're assigning that to another dictionary, just like we did with the wings, where the price is going to be the price the user sent to us, and the quantity remaining, I need quotes around that, by the way, just add quotes. And then the quantity remaining is going to be set to the quantity remaining the user just posted to us as well. Oh, why did I do that? Okay, going back to it again. Where is it? No, there it is. Going back to it again, this should basically do the job for us. Now the only thing that's left is we can do a return statement here, which is going to return a message and the message is going to be, let's just say an F string because we want to be fancy. The message is going to say result item, so basically the item name that the user sent to us, added to the menu successfully, and voila, that should do the job. Now that's the post request. You might say it's very similar to a put request, and it is, because all you're doing is you're grabbing data from the user, and then in the case of the put request, that data already exists somewhere. You're just trying to update it with the data user's giving to you. But in the case of a post request, you're adding it to something, so it's fresh data. So I'm gonna run this again. Hopefully there's no errors. Nice. And we're gonna go in here, and I'm going to do a get request to menu. Obviously nothing shows up, but if I did a get request to wings, something should show up, and we get price 5.5, quantity 30. So let's do a post request to menu, and let's send it off. And it says that you've entered, we've got basically a 404, but let's try doing a post request again. And obviously I was getting a 404 because I had an extra / in the end. These type of things can cause errors. So we did add validation to make sure that the user obviously needs to add the item name, the quantity remaining, and price. If they don't provide that data, then we just return an error, which it's doing. Perfect. So let's actually provide the data. Let's provide item name to be, let's say, wings. No, not wings, because we already got wings. So we'll do burger. Let's send it off, and it should still give us this error because we're still missing the price and the quantity. So let's do price as well this time. Price is equal to, just to troll, 10 pence. And then let's send it off. Still missing fields because we're missing the quantity remaining. We'll do and quantity remaining is equal to 100. And now if we send it off, we have an error because it says item is not defined. Okay. Let's go back in here, and it says item is not defined. Result item. Okay, that's because item, actually, let's go back in here. Result item. Oh, it's because item is obviously needs to be in quotes since it is a key and not a variable. So let's run that again. That was very silly of me. We can basically just run the same query again. So run that again, and it says burger added successfully to the menu. Now the only way to verify this would be to do a get request under the menu, and we can, if we did wings here, obviously we get the price for wings and quantity remaining for wings. But if we did burger here, as you can see, the post request did actually work because now we're able to grab the price, which was 0.10, that's what we set it to, and the quantity remaining, we did set it to 100. So it's working flawlessly. Now, another last thing that I would like to do with this API is to be able to return all the items on the menu if the user does a get request to just menu, because it'll be so much easier for the user to just be able to get sort of a dictionary with all the items on the menu and all their details, rather than having to go / burger, because bear in mind, a user that didn't use your API might not know what these items are, so it will be a good functionality to add. So let's do exactly that. Let's close this off, go into the main again, and we're going to do a get request. So we're going to say def get and then self. Now bear in mind, this time we're not asking for an item because we're not going to request or return data about a specific item. We're just going to return everything that is in the menu dictionary. So we're going to return RMS, and then we're just going to return menu. So that will basically just return the entire RMS menu that we have. If it's empty, it's just going to return an empty dictionary. So that's pretty much the final ending touch that I wanted to add to this. Let's see if it works. Let's go ahead and try that off. Now if I go to menu, let's just make sure it's not in full screen, send that off. As you see, I get wings, price 5.5, quantity remaining. Now I no longer have to go into wings because, oh wait, why did that? Oh, of course, because I have to go into menu first, then Wings. So I no longer have to go into menu and then Wings. I can just go into menu and be able to see basically all the items inside menu. Now you might say it looks the same, but obviously that's because we only have one item. Now, I can prove that to you by making a quick post request. So let's make a post request to add an item. And then we'll say the item is equal to burger again, and price is equal to £10. And quantity remaining is going to be equal to 100. Let's make that post request. Burger has been added successfully. Now I can prove my point by going back to the menu endpoint and then just doing a get request, and I should be able to see Wings and menu. So as you see, in the correct order as well, it says Wings first and then burger. Obviously we could change the order and stuff if we had a more usable, more viable, more generic database, which we could just make a query to sort by. But I'm pretty sure we could sort by keys as well if we added timestamps in here, but that would just make things complicated. Either way, guys, that was just a short tutorial on how you would create a simple basic API using Flask, being able to use all the methodologies from CRUD, such as create, read, update, and delete. So that's all the points we covered, while also being able to wrap this logic around a sort of real-life EPOS system. Hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial and were able to learn something new from it. I would like to apologize for not posting for so long, but I will try and push out at least one video per month now that I'm back. If you guys have any ideas, as always, feel free to join my Discord chat and post your ideas there, or you can leave them in the comments as well. If you would like to subscribe, go ahead and do so. If you would like to like or any of the following, go ahead and do so. I would really appreciate it, as it really helps. And guys, thank you so much for sticking around. I will see your beautiful faces in the next tutorial. Peace.